Chapter 51. Girl? Opportunity? Repeat? Lu Mingfei couldn't figure out what it meant. But at this moment his neck was already being strangled by a dark and bruised hand. You can almost see the blood flowing through the vessels. It's like the long bright red river running countless miles underground. Cut off all causes and effects between the two worlds. The other side of the river is covered with gorgeous flowers. What do you mean? Who the hell are you? Lu Mingfei tried his best to move, but every part of his body seemed to be built into a mountain that was as high as the clouds. Heavy, lack of oxygen, powerless. Hello. Hie Hie's entire body was covered in cold light. Each beam was filled with despair that was enough to kill anyone and anything present. The veins on his right hand were almost popping out. The 5 fingers were almost about to dig into the man's throat. Die? Or answer my question. A murderous intent so strong that it made Lu Mingfei breathless had really descended upon him. My legs started to feel weak. The person in front of me is a devil. Why do I have to suffer like this? Ever since he first met this person, that inexplicable feeling has been invading his thoughts all the time. Swap, brother. As a childish voice came from somewhere, time suddenly stopped and all the discomfort in the body suddenly disappeared. Behind this madman, a little boy about 13 or 14 years old was sitting at the dining table. The 2 feet that couldn't touch the ground were swinging in disorder. When did the sky outside become so dark? The black evening gown, deeper than the abyss, sits quietly on her body. It made him seem even more silent than the night. Lu Mingfei looked at all this absurdity and felt like his head was about to explode. What girl, what start over, what exchange? I'm just a high school student. What the hell is going on? Why is there another child here? Run! This man is crazy. But the child didn't move at all, just raised his head slightly. I don't know where my eyes are looking. Why is there so much sadness and loneliness on that young face? It's like a person has lived somewhere for thousands or tens of thousands of years. Exchange. He seemed not to have heard Lu Mingfei's words at all and repeated the question again. What are you exchanging? Why are you asking me all these weird questions? Lu Mingfei was going crazy. Recently, there were so many things that he couldn't understand. He wanted to break free from the right hand of the person in front of him, but found that he was still unable to move at all. I can give my brother the power to kill this man. The little boy finally jumped down and slowly walked towards Lu Mingfei. There was a flame that could burn everything in those golden eyes, just like the sun you see from the top of a mountain, or like a bright red skirt on fire. He deserved to die. When that pair of eyes met Lu Mingfei's, all his consciousness seemed to suddenly fade away. I couldn't help but have such a thought. Something is bubbling up from deep within the pupils. This is good, isn't it? Anyway, he has been thinking this way for a long time. Then. Hey, you haven't answered my question yet. In an absolutely still space. The madman's eyes suddenly moved. The golden dragon eyes were burning with majesty. Click, everything that was stagnant began to suddenly break down. It's like glass that has been blasted by high temperature. Shattered layer by layer. It was like a faded painting that gradually began to be painted with color from where Hie Hie was standing. When everything is about to return to normal. Only the little boy's location remained unchanged. He clearly felt it. This madman in the last moments met his gaze. The little boy smiled, put his hands behind his back, and disappeared while jumping. You will eventually die in the land of under the clouds and on the trees, die in. Under that throne. The ethereal voice seemed to resound directly into Hie Hie's heart. It shook every nerve in his body. Death? Eventually? Didn't I come here just to destroy those so-called absolute destinies? Just right. At this moment, Hie Hie's mind seemed to be suddenly hit by a heavy hammer. A taut line suddenly broke. The vision became flickering. All the strength in my body disappeared like a flood. He felt weightless. The heaven and earth began to turn upside down, and the young man in his hand broke away from his hand and fell into the sky. And he flew towards the ground. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window. A golden dragon eye opened majestically. The vertical abyss in the middle seems like eternal night. But what spread out was a golden stream of light. You, what exactly are you? Hie Hie had already closed his eyes and continued to fly towards the ground. Rhyme is indescribably tired. In the end, is it still silence? Bang! Pa! After it's all over. The world still hasn't recovered. With a snap of fingers, everything returned to silence again. A girl wearing a hat suddenly appeared next to Hie Hie. Gently stroke his face with your hands. Very light and very quiet. The lavender eyes were full of heartache and doting. She opened her mouth and seemed to say something. Then he slowly leaned over and kissed Hie Hie on the forehead. A teardrop also flowed down the cheek. It dripped into his closed eyes. Ding-ling-ling, it's like the sound of a breeze blowing past, shaking the wind chimes. Everything in the room suddenly began to spin. Broken wine glasses, bloody roses blooming in the air, and fallen tables and chairs. Even those who remained in a kneeling position. Everything is returning to how it was before. Guderian was still smiling, striding along the path near the window. Lu Mingfei, his uncle, aunt, and cousin looked at the burly old man walking towards them with a little surprise. The waiter placed the wine glass in his hand steadily on the plate. Be good to yourself, my. He woke up suddenly. Then look around. He was still standing in the elevator. Even his hands were still clenched tightly. The whole person was tense. In his memory, which is still extremely clear at this moment, he fainted due to overuse of the word spirit. The feeling of almost draining blood is still hurting my nerves. Someone's words are still echoing in my ears. But there are only some rhymes left, which I cannot find at all. At this moment, a cool feeling slid across my cheek. He inexplicably stretched out his right hand to catch it. It just fell into the palm of my hand. Crystal clear and translucent. This is... whose tears? What exactly happened? He felt his mind was in complete chaos. First of all, he must have done what he remembered. The pain in the body and the roar in the soul. At this moment, everything is still clearly telling him that everything exists. So now, why is this the case? He couldn't help scratching his hair. After eliminating all unreasonable possibilities from my mind, there is only one answer left. Infinite rebirth. This seems to be the only explanation at this point. After all, this super skill with unknown possibilities and defects may be the only variable. At this time, Guderian, who had already shaken hands with Lu Mingfei, suddenly pointed his left hand at Hie Hie. He was so excited that I didn't know what he was talking about. Seeing this, Hie Hie walked out of the elevator. Slowly walked towards the young man. Between the eyebrows, the wind and rain are not stained. When he came up to him, Guderian introduced him. But Hie Hie just stretched out his left hand from his pocket and placed his palm open in front of Lu Mingfei. Hello, my name is... Hie Hie. There was no gleam of emotion in his eyes, which were like a deep, grey pool. There was no expression on his face. Just like the winter sky, always the same color. For Hie Hie, he had already gotten the answer he wanted. The curtain of this dragon slaying. In the end, he still has to open it. Go on stage. To mark the end. To destroy all regrets and injustices. Even though he admitted that when he came, had expectations for it. Chapter 52. Lu Mingfei looked at the boy in front of him who should be about the same age as him. There was obvious avoidance and surprise in his eyes. He realized that it was the man he had met on the street some time ago. The violent beating of the heart and the familiar feeling of frenzy at this moment are proof of this. And in this inexplicable feeling, there seems to be something more. Give him the feeling. It's like I've seen it just now before. Thinking of this, Lu Mingfei himself found it ridiculous. The other person's hand was still raised. Silent, yet seemingly full of power. Like an iron sword shining with cold light. Cold and silent in the frost and snow for 10,000 years. It's waiting for someone to pull it out, and then swear an oath of blood to all living things. Yes, it's like releasing a devil that can only destroy. Although he still obediently stretched out his hand to shake it. After all, imagination is just imagination. There are no such things that are beyond the ordinary in reality. This is not a myth. But when he held this person's hand, that strong feeling suddenly rushed out again. It's like a waterfall, heavy and unquestionable. As a result, veins on the left hand that was holding the ball suddenly appeared and were still throbbing. It seemed like a great effort was used. He quickly forced himself to let go. The moment he let go, he found that his hands seemed to be weak, sore, and painful. Then look at the other person's reaction. Because this really wasn't my intention, it was as if, yes, it was as if I was suddenly possessed by a ghost. But fortunately, the other party didn't seem to react at all and slowly put his hand back into his pocket. Hie Hie naturally felt Liu Mingfei's abnormality and the strange force when he shook hands just now. It was like being grabbed by a pair of spiked pliers. Even his hand, which was being held, was still trembling slightly. "Hello, my name is Liu Mingfei." At this time, the young man seemed to come to his senses and introduced his name. "I still don't know where my eyes are looking at, but they have never met each other's eyes." Hie Hie didn't react at all, just glanced at him indifferently. There are wisps of winter clouds in her eyes and eyebrows. I don't know where it will drift to. Of course I know. It's more like talking to myself. And that is indeed the case. "Professor Guderian, I'm leaving now." At this time, Guderian had just taken out a piece of paper from the jacket pocket of his suit. "A letter, to be exact." "Leaving now? Why don't you stay for breakfast? The salmon made by this chef is really worth a try." He pointed to the brown and white pieces of fish neatly arranged on the table. "In fact, it looks more like spring rolls." "No, there will be a chance." Compared to these things, Hie Hie wanted to eat the potato rice left over from last night more. It's time for him to go back. After all, if I just leave a note and go out, my parents will definitely be worried. As for the leaves, I guess I haven't gotten up yet after walking back. Don't ask why, the reason is that last night she called Hie Hie to play landlord, but she kept losing. Keep playing if you keep losing. I finally won a game and then I was willing to go to bed. It was already around 1 in the morning. Before entering the room, he did not forget to raise his head, proudly mocking his opponent for his bad luck. Even though there were no jokers or kings in the entire game. Hie Hie has 6 cards left. Hie Hie smiled at Yesheng and Judaki, then turned and left. With his hands in his jacket pockets, he walked on the path near the window. The view outside the window is brilliant, and a few little swallows are flying freely in the sunshine. Behind him, Guderian was reading the letter in his hand. The voice is awkward but the reading is really done with emotion. Liu Mingfei's eyes were already wet. From time to time, a few rays of sunlight flash by, making it look even more crystal clear and sad. He tilted his head slightly, as if looking at the dazzling chandelier on the ceiling. Or maybe, just because tears are about to fall. Hie Hie was not interested in this and just walked forward. The protagonist just needs to stay like this. Whether it was according to fate that he entered Castle College. It is better to stay and become an ordinary boy who is ignorant of happiness. That's good. Just live with a smile behind me. It doesn't require any effort on your part. You don't need to exchange anything. You don't need to feel any despair or the dawn of morning light because everything will be destroyed by me, bite. The elevator just stopped at this floor. Hie Hie walked quickly on the way home. It still took a little while to come out. Hie Hie. As soon as Hie Hie reached the door of Wanjua's shop, he was stopped by a voice. He knew exactly who the voice belonged to. "Teacher Zhang, is there anything wrong?" At this time, Zhang Yan was leaning on a taxi that looked a bit shabby on the street. He just inhaled a puff of smoke and exhaled a vast expanse of white mist. The bright red in the depths of his pupils seemed even more intense. Like a cigarette butt blown by the wind. Hot and shining. "Let's talk in the car." After saying that, Zhang Yan slowly threw the empty cigarette holder into the trash can. Then he got into the driving seat. Seeing this, Hie Hie did as he said and sat in the co-pilot seat. Since he has something to ask, it just so happens that I have something to say too. "University, where are you going?" Zhang Yan took out the blindfold from the cabinet on the driver's seat and put it on himself. Then, as if he felt uncomfortable sitting, he lowered the seat back a little. "With your grades, it should be easy for you to go to a university in the capital. In my opinion, Yanqing University is very good. The professors there are very good, there are many beautiful girls, and No. Before he could finish, Hie Hie interrupted him. He knew very well the purpose of Zhang Yan's coming. "I have a college I want to go to, and I've been accepted." Then there was a complete silence. In the car, only the radio was humming a ballad, "El Maride tonight, the battle is coming tonight, yet it doesn't matter what we face, I'ma go off." Yet. Finally, it was Zhang Yan who broke the silence. The rhyme is a bit low and the voice seems a little hoarse. "Do I have to go?" Hie Hie looked out the window and saw the old man surnamed Ren still lying in the wooden rocking chair. "I don't seem to be able to sleep today." He fanned himself with the palm leaf fan. "Watch the pedestrians coming at the intersection and watch them leave." So many autumns and summers passed like this. Must. There was no confusion in Hie Hie's eyes, only calmness and clarity. It seems that I have seen what I wanted. Oh, I see. Zhang Yan stretched out his right hand and adjusted the eye mask. Then he took out a can of beer from the car cabinet. It opened with a hiss. I understand. Let's go. Hie Hie didn't say much, just opened the car door and went out. But it was not closed. Teacher Zhang, I won't be around anymore, may I bother you? Can you help students look after their families occasionally? Hie Hie's hand was on the edge of the car door. Zhang Yan's expression could no longer be seen. It was an abrupt and risky question, but he had to ask it. He needed to know the answer to this question. If you have time. The weight of the words coming out of the car was enough. With him here, there will be no unsolvable problems at home. Thank you, teacher, sincere and relieved, just like what a student who is about to go on a long journey says to his mentor. Although the facts are not much different. Hie Hie walked home faster, which took some time. But fortunately, I gained a lot. In the car, Zhang Yan drank beer one sip after another. The action was swift and violent. The blindfold then slowly fell off. Above the dark eye bags. His pupils drooped, seeming to be full of fatigue. And in the very center, countless blood-red lights were almost overflowing. But it is still impossible to cover the entire eyes. The beer bottle in his hand had been pierced with 5 small holes without him noticing. Then it was suddenly crushed. Shut up, shut up. Chapter 53. Every day and every moment after that. These are days that are like miracles for Hie Hie. He has 3 families. I go to school with my sister in the morning. I go home at noon to help my mother with housework. When my father comes home at night, he always talks to me about his ideals and the future. All of these are treasures worth cherishing forever for him. Buried in the heart, existing in the deepest part of the mind. Even if I die 10,000 times and am reborn 10,000 times. None of them will disappear. This is something that belongs to him alone. Beyond dreams. Happiness. Words that he once dared not even reach out to. Perhaps that was why he always held her in his arms with utmost tenderness. Wednesday, September 29, 2009. There are 2 days left before Hie Hie goes abroad. Some time ago, Guderian and Yesheng visited my home directly. The burly figure and foreign face scared Hie Fukeo and Zhang Xinjian a little when they first saw them. I thought it was a robber who came to rob. Because it was already past 10 o'clock in the evening. It was Hie Hie who let them in. Both of them were dressed formally and solemnly, and the custom-made Dormuil Vanquish 2 suits further highlighted the sturdy and elegant demeanor of this old German gentleman. He even had the badge pinned to his chest. A giant tree that is half living and half decayed, with its lifeless branches and lush leaves extending in opposite directions with clear separation. The broken sky plays the lament of death. It was like a pierced mirror, falling off layer by layer. Everything in the world fell silent. Or burial soil. There was only that dilapidated Haran body. Standing tall. To bridge the gap where destruction spreads. Standing in the midst of the despair of falling. Guderian said that the school saw Hie Hie's application and was very satisfied. So I came to invite him specially. He praised Hie Hie in front of the parents for how outstanding she was and how well she met the admission requirements of Castle College. They also promised many things, scholarships, safety, and a bright future after graduation. Throughout the whole process, this burly German old man held Hie Fukeo's hand. Just like some days when the sun is about to set and the afterglow is setting, people are chatting about family matters in and out of the alley. Finally, Guderian pulled out a cell phone. It shows an unknown number. All Hie Hie needs to do is say okay. It has been recorded in the archives of Castle College. Hie Fukeo smiled and looked at his son proudly. His eyes were full of encouragement and trust to let it fly. There was already a sparkling light in Zhang Xinjian's eyes. A few tears stopped at the corners of her eyes, looking like they would fall any moment. Her hands rested comfortably in her lap. Also smiling. His eyes were always on his son, always watching everything about him. Just like when we were kids. And Hie Hie. As soon as the other party told him the purpose of his visit, he returned to the room. Sit quietly at the table. She went through the questions Hie Hie assigned to her over and over again. Except for the slight sound of the pen tip sliding across the paper. All that can be seen is the girl's slightly gloomy eyes. Flashing again and again. Until the tip of the pen breaks, it finally stops at a small spring of clear water. Sure, Hie held the phone. The voice was clearly calm, but it always felt like it was trembling. It's like an ancient well that reflects the moon, even if you throw a stone in to test it. Nor can I see the scattered shadows of the moon. Just as he could not see him sleeping again in the well. At this moment, Hie was standing at the door of Hie's bedroom. All the things needed for the trip have been prepared and placed next to the bed. Quilts, quilt covers, clothes, toothbrush, tooth mug, towels. There is also homemade pickled bacon. Several kilograms. It is said that if you go to the other side of the ocean, you will definitely miss this taste. He knocked on the door in front of him that was hung with light pink tassels. There was no emotion in his tone. It just seems a little depressed. Yes, can you go out for a walk with your brother? Silence. Brother is leaving, isn't he? Silence. Then do you want to? Before Hie could finish speaking, the door slowly opened. Hie in front of him had a blank expression on her face, with fatigue and tiredness written all over her face. The light black of the eye bags is like dark clouds on a rainy night. She looked even more ethereal and frail. Hie could roughly guess why and was about to ask. Hie walked right past him and went to the door to change her shoes. It seems like they are having a quarrel. So I had no choice but to follow her slowly. The younger sister still walks in front and the older brother still walks behind. The night sky is exceptionally clear tonight, and even at this hour when it is just getting dark, you can clearly see the stars shining in the sky. Unfortunately, no one is interested in watching it at the moment. The brother and sister never kept pace. Hie walked slowly, and Hie occasionally told the direction to go from behind. She didn't say anything, but just followed and moved forward step by step. Every step is always small. Just like a weak baby rabbit. The distance of each jump is no more than the length of his ears. She just walked in silence. The grid above the ground seems to be much longer than usual. But it doesn't matter. It would be better if it was a little longer. Long enough to last another winter. Arrive. I heard my brother's voice from behind me again. Only then did she come to her senses. Raise your head. There was no one around and it was pitch black ahead. It just seems familiar. She felt like she might have been there. Buzz. Followed by a clearly audible sound of electric current. Start from where Hie is standing. The orange door lit up, and a tiger sign with arms outstretched and a bright smile stood at the top. Then, like dominoes, the lights around them gradually lit up one after another. The merry-go-round has begun to dance, the gentle and lively tune of waves of the dance also sounded. Under the glow of the shed, colorful bumper cars were already positioned at the starting point. The pendulum flickered, swung, flew into the sky and then slowly fell down. The last thing to light up was the towering device in the middle. The huge platter at the top looks like a crescent moon, emitting dazzling rays of light. Hie was still standing there, eyes wide open. Mouth slightly open. Obviously very surprised. Because the place in front of us was clearly the amusement park before. The one I dreamed about for several nights. What do you want to play? Brother will accompany you. Hie opened and closed her mouth again and again, as if she had not yet come to her senses. My eyes are already filled with tears. I don't know if it was because of surprise. I am too happy that my brother is still the same as before. Always keep in mind what she thinks. Just like when I was 6 years old. The light pink hairpin with a little tiger embedded in it. Hie walked slowly to her side and patted her head. Following her gaze towards the towering platter. Let's go. Your brother, will sacrifice myself to accompany the beautiful girl today. The doctor said I'm much better now. I just need to play for a while and rest for a while. I'll be fine. The crystal tears in Hie's eyes flashed, just like the sun suddenly shining out from the clouds. Full of enthusiasm and hope. Good. Her smile was so brilliant, and her watery eyes seemed to be filled with twilight. All it takes is a speck of moon dust to fall into. You can light up thousands of lights. Hie pulled Hie, and the brother and sister ran into the amusement park. In the distance, the top floor of the Regent Hotel. A burly old man stood in front of the French window, his smile kind and full of appreciation. The advance on the scholarship was to fulfill my sister's wish. Ha ha ha, great value for money. Hie, what a child to look forward to. Thursday, September 30th, 2009 at 12:12 am. There are very few people on the street. The brother carried his sister on his back and walked slowly back home. The little girl on my back fell asleep while playing. It seems that I am indeed too tired. I don't know how long she has been studying these past few nights. The big pendulum hasn't been played yet. He seemed to be fast asleep and even talked in his sleep. Okay, let's go play later. My brother walked steadily, step by step, quietly. One more ride on the carousel. Well, after riding the pendulum, we'll go ride the merry-go-round. Haunted house. Okay, haunted house. Brother, please don't go. Talking and talking. I don't know when the little sister on my back started crying. Tears slid across her fair and delicate face and flowed onto her brother's shoulders. The voice is thin and hoarse, just like she is acting like a spoiled child. It always worked in the past. But my brother didn't stop and continued to walk forward slowly. The whole world is so quiet. From this moment on, it seemed that only the faint sound of his footsteps could be heard. Hie, my brother has something he must do. Click. It's only me, and only I, who will save the person. Click. If there is a day when I can come back, I really hope. Click. I can still see you and your parents smiling. Snap. In a flash, the moon fell behind the roof. Chapter 54. Monday, October 1st, 2009. The day Hie Hie went abroad. The sky seemed a little gloomy towards evening. Street vendors, street singers, and children walking in the middle of the street handing out flyers. The people on the street seemed to have stopped talking and just walked forward on their own. Perhaps this is life at its best. It's so quiet and bustling. Just like people come here every day. There are also people who exist only in yesterday's memory. Hie Hie and his family were walking on the road. Hifukeo was carrying a large woven bag on his right shoulder, with pillows and bedding inside. The toothbrush and toothbrush holder are squeezed at the very side. You can tell what shape it is from the outside. In his left hand he was holding a black bag. It was filled with a few pounds of homemade bacon. Hie Hie wanted to get it himself, but Hifukeo refused to give it to him. Walking in silence. The back figure is firm and weathered. But it seems to have the power to support the heaven and earth. The same was true for Hie Hie, who always walked a beat slower and held Hie Hie's sleeve tightly with her right hand. It seems like I was not paying attention. My brother will be like ice on the water in late winter. Just disappeared suddenly like that. Into the lake she couldn't find, the sea Zhongxinjian kept giving instructions and nagging over and over again. Did you bring your passport, clothes, medicine? Just like when we were kids and were going on a spring outing. But this time may be different. The place he was going to was very far away. It's more than tens of thousands of kilometers away from this city. They finally reached the airport gate. Hie Hie looked at the grand and exquisite building in front of him. Most of the space is occupied by glass that is so clean that it is even a little shiny. He suddenly felt that he had left the city long ago. Then he paused, as if he had thought of something. I couldn't help but smile, my eyes full of courage. Only then did he slowly come back to his senses. That's the truth. From the moment I knew the dragon, a journey had been opened up that could only be taken by him alone. It spread to countless miles away in an instant. Yes, in fact, from the very beginning, that was the world he stood in. It is far away from any place known to anyone. Still too far away. Mom and Dad, let's stop here. Hie Hie took the woven bag and bacon from Hifukeo. Plus the army green shoulder bag she carried and the sack full of clothes. Hie Hie's body was already covered with things. I just said you should buy a suitcase. Look at all the bags you have. What if your classmates laugh at you? Zhang Xinjian glanced at him with some resentment. But her hands helped him carry the woven bag on his shoulders. Hie Hie didn't say anything. Just smiling, looking. Hie Hie stood quietly by the side, with her head down, kicking a stone under her feet tirelessly. The line of sight also keeps moving forward and backward. Seems bored. Seems not to care. But the hands behind his back were already turning purple from being scratched. At this moment, she suddenly felt someone patted her head. When I looked up, I saw Hie Hie's smile. It's so calm that it seems unable to hide many emotions. But at this moment, she clearly showed reluctance and expectation. Hie, even though your brother is not around, you still have to remember to study hard, okay? A feeling of sadness from the heart suddenly rushed into the nose. Cannot. Not leaving? She understands, She understands. Her brother has his own things to do, and that's what her brother would do, isn't it? Elder brother. But she doesn't want to understand at all. I don't want to know how to grow up, and I don't want to know how to say goodbye. I don't want to feel the mood at this moment. She said it so quietly that she wasn't even sure she had said it. But the emotion in the smile on my brother's face was even greater. The explanation is what it said. She smiled, as bright as usual. Eyes full of spirit and a hint of water. It seems more touching and frank. I will be even better than my brother in the future. She seemed to have made a decision. The seeds that had been buried long ago burst out at this moment and rushed to the infinite distance in the sky in an instant. Leading somewhere. Maybe many years later. If there is such a thing as many years. Hie Hie would be proud of her too. Well, I'm waiting for that day. Hie Hie smiled and patted her head, then stood up straight. Lift the bag on your shoulder a little higher. He looked at his family again. Well, Mom and Dad, I'm leaving now. The boy will eventually go away. There was no further conversation after that, and Hie Hie turned and walked into the airport. His parents were behind him, and he couldn't see what his sister's expression was. Maybe. I don't dare to look. It's time for him to go. Check in, go through security, wait, and board the plane. Everything went smoothly. Until he got on the plane and found his seat. There was already someone sitting next to it. Hie Hie. The other party hesitated, seemingly shocked by what he saw. Or even, panic. He wanted to keep his distance from this person. The same is true for Hie Hie. But I have already guessed the reason in my heart. He still greeted him naturally. Hello. Lu Mingfei. Then they looked at each other in silence. Lu Mingfei picked up the magazine in the seat strap in front of him and started reading. Obviously a little absent-minded. Hie Hie had no interest in delving into this matter. This situation must have been arranged by Guderian or Eva. No doubt about it. His hands were resting on the ledge of the nearby porthole. There seemed to be mist flowing between his eyebrows. What was reflected in his eyes was Yuking, which was slowly getting smaller. It's the family that is slowly getting smaller. Even though it's already gone. He closed his eyes. He thought he needed some sleep. After all, the road ahead will definitely not be smooth sailing. At this time, two figures were standing higher than the clouds. Quietly watching the plane fly away. The sun is about to lose all its light here. The last rays of sunlight shone on them. It actually shows an antiquity that almost surpasses 10,000 years ago. It's about to begin. How long has it been? Long time. Yeah, it's been too long. When the last ray of light fades. The sky is already caring about the clouds rolling and unrolling. It's still vast and boundless. At this time, climb Tian Shan Mountain, to the top of the tall tower. A young man sat quietly on the narrow platform of the tower window. Holding a dead leaf in his hand that was about to break. This was picked up in the corner at the top of the tower. It probably thought it was winter outside. Or maybe he was just a poor guy who was left behind. He stretched out his hand and the leaf lay in his palm. It's a pity there is no wind outside. Nor did it take away its cold winter. But he still didn't move, just like a leaf. Master, he's gone. A tall, slender figure stood in the shadows. His eyebrows were lowered. Like a shadow or a smoke screen. It may disappear in a flash. The boy didn't even turn his head. It's like talking to the sky outside the window, or to the dead leaves in my hands. You should go back to that place. Shut up. Before the man in the shadows could finish speaking. The young man suddenly interrupted him in a harsh tone. He clenched his hands violently, and veins popped out instantly. With a crisp sound, the dead leaves turned into countless tiny particles of dust and passed through the fingertips. Falling into the myriad greens at the bottom of the tower. He took one last look at the sky. It's like watching a cloud leave. Let's go. The boy jumped off the windowsill. At this time, a breeze blew outside. There seemed to be some brown scent in the wind. He couldn't help but look back, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. So young and cheerful. But when he turned around and merged into the darkness after the light disappeared, those pupils seemed to be cast from blood. Spreading from the center to all directions. Forming an extremely dense bright red network. At this moment, in his eyes, is the only light. Chapter 55. No words were spoken that night. Hie Hie woke up at 4 a.m. Lu Mingfei was still asleep, even in his dream, his brows were slightly wrinkled. It seems that he is full of ups and downs in his heart for the upcoming journey. The Gentleman's Quarterly magazine was already placed between his knees. The cover features a handsome man in a suit, a brand name watch, and hairspray. I guess he fell asleep while watching. Outside the window, a full moon hangs in the sky. The silvery white light looks like countless petals dancing. Far away, a lighthouse stands alone in the darkness. There should be sea under the plain. The waves are surging, vast and boundless. The blue horizon drifted toward the invisible island. Maybe you can even see a girl standing on a lighthouse and mailing a letter. Safely sealed in a glass bottle. Follow the water flow to a future. Isn't that the case? Floating and sinking, quietly. Continue to live peacefully in a world that is countless times larger than his own. Hie Hie just looked out the window quietly. The scenery seems to be different every moment. I thought a lot in my mind. Past, present and future. Every time I think about it to the end, I am always at a loss. But fortunately, there is a lighthouse with a faint glow in his heart. There is also a girl waiting for him in the lighthouse. That's enough. Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at our destination. Welcome to Chicago. Tuesday, October 2, 2009, 6:24 a.m. Welcome to Chicago. The windy city. Hie Hie was about to stand up, but found that Lu Mingfei was still asleep. And he seemed to be sleeping soundly. There were already some drops of saliva at the corners of his mouth. The magazine had fallen to the ground at some point. So Hie Hie simply stepped over his outstretched legs, stood in the aisle and picked up her things. The cabin has also been opened. I wanted to just leave, but... Lu Mingfei, we're here. We were on a plane, and the two people sitting next to me were freshmen, but in the end only one of them arrived on time. It's always unreasonable, right? Lu Mingfei finally woke up, stretched himself and looked around with sleepy eyes. Then I realized I had arrived. I couldn't help but let out a low cry. He quickly stood up and packed his things. Hie Hie stood at the hatch and waited for a while. After making sure he was awake, he left. Following the flow of passengers, we arrived at the baggage claim area in the airport lobby. Then he took out a small black notebook with gold edges from his shoulder bag. Having said that, it is actually as thick as a hardcover Xinhua dictionary. On the cover is a giant tree with lush branches and leaves that almost cover the sky. This was one of the freshman gift packages that Guderian gave him before he went to Russia, a complete guide to Castle Academy. It contains all the visible and some invisible history of the university. And its real expertise, dragon family genealogy, dragon structure analysis, alchemical chemistry. It doesn't matter. As long as it is beneficial to slaying the dragon, he will learn them all. But the most important thing now is the first chapter of this book. Admission guide. Hie Hie went through the process again. It seems that I have to go to the train station to transfer trains. Then you will go directly to Castle College. He sat in a row of seats in the airport lobby, waiting quietly for my luggage number to be called. He now only carries those few pounds of bacon in his shoulder bag. People of all kinds walked past in an endless stream, some dragging suitcases, some carrying backpacks. Looking at the watch and the big clock. In a hurry. It seemed to highlight the inexplicable indifference surrounding the young man at the moment. Fortunately, he was called after a while. I also got my luggage smoothly. After seeing Lu Mingfei running over, he continued to move on to the next place. Chicago train station. I don't know if it's because it's too early, but there aren't as many taxis on the street as I'd imagined. It was difficult to get on one. After putting the luggage in the trunk, I sat in the back seat. It was then that Hie Hie discovered there was a little girl in the back seat. About 6 or 7 years old. Wearing a light pink princess dress. There was a white veil tied on her head. But he doesn't seem to be an American, but rather seems to be from a country in Southwest Asia. Ever since he sat down, he looked at me with stars in his eyes without any concealment. The same thing happened after the car started moving. Hey gorgeous! While waiting at a red light, the little girl finally spoke. I just didn't expect that the first thing he said would be a royal bomb. Even the driver in the driving seat couldn't help but laugh out loud. This caught Hie Hie off guard. I had to smile in response. But it was only then that he discovered. The driver clearly looked like a typical American. She has blonde hair and blue eyes, and exudes the word freedom. It's obvious that she has no relationship with the little girl next to her. Hello sir, who is this little girl? Although it may sound a bit nosy, there's no harm in asking. At this time, Hie Hie was somewhat glad that he had practiced speaking well after returning to Huaxia from Japan. Now I can complete some superficial communication. But before the driver could say anything, the little girl next to him answered excitedly. My name is Cassie, Bria Cassie, can you tell me your name? Hie Hie really couldn't handle this inexplicable enthusiasm. Keeping a smile on his face, he said softly, my name is Hie Hie. Are you working with Dad? While answering, a question was also raised. This way he could tell whether his suspicions were correct. But the little girl didn't seem to be listening to Hie Hie at all. He continued asking to himself, his eyes full of joy and excitement that his dream was about to come true. Well, does Hie Hie have a wife? This question almost made Hie Hie spit out blood. Then he looked at her again. That's right, it's a little girl. But he still answered softly. No. After hearing this, the little girl raised her hands in the car and cheered. Then he hugged Hie Hie directly. Like a little leopard, it pounced into my arms. This immediately disconnected him. I could only let him hold me, and his head gently rubbed my hand. Cassie! Stop it! At this time, the driver in the front seat finally spoke. And the tone was quite harsh. The car has stopped and the destination is across the street. The words Chicago Station stand at the top of the building. Conspicuous and grand. Dad, I found it. The person Grandma was talking about must be Hie Hie, right? The little girl didn't seem to be frightened by the anger in the driver's words and was still full of excitement. I clearly find this Huaxia name very awkward to pronounce. But his tone was like that of someone who had been searching for too long. The driver parked the car in a permitted parking space and put on the handbrake. Then he turned around. His face was full of seriousness and solemnity, and his tone was even a little commanding. Cassie, let go of your brother. He's here, and he's not the one you're looking for. After hearing this, the little girl paused and loosened her arms around Hie Hie. But something in those watery eyes remained stubborn. But Grandma said that as long as I meet someone who looks like the one in the painting and as handsome as my dad, as long as I wait until I marry him. As he spoke, tears seemed to be about to fall from his eyes. Then she thought of something, wiped her eyes with her right hand, and took out a painting from her light pink backpack beside her. Above, there is a dark-haired man in a windbreaker, standing on the left side of the painting. There are paintings of flowers, grasslands, and blue skies. On the right side of the painting, there is a woman wearing a pure white wedding dress with the hem of her skirt falling very far. She had just walked out of a building that had gaps everywhere. Everything around was in ruins. Shards of glass were flying and flames were exploding in the distance. But the woman had tears in her eyes and a happy and bright smile on her lips. In the very center of the painting, there is a row of elegant English letters. My knight, you see, my love is the most beautiful castle in the ruins. Chapter 56. The little girl held the painting high in both hands. Get close to Hie Hie's eyes. Full of confidence and stubbornness. The person on the left is obviously Hie Hie, he looks exactly like the painting my grandma gave me. The driver in the front seat seemed helpless after hearing this. He sighed lightly and didn't say much. He just got out of the car, went to the back seat and opened Hie Hie's door. The light blue eyes were a little dim at this moment. His face was full of apology. And helped take Hie Hie's luggage out of the car. I'm sorry sir, she is my daughter. It's just that something happened that made her behave strangely. You know, children are easily influenced. In the car, the little girl held the painting in her hands, leaning it against her legs. His eyebrows were lowered. The right hand gently strokes the cheek of the woman in the wedding dress on the right. His lips trembled slightly, as if he was whispering something. She doesn't look American. Hie Hie glanced at the little girl in the car again, and then looked at the man's classic blue pupils of white people. It seems to have a sense of scrutiny. The man seemed to come back to his senses at this moment and couldn't help laughing a few times. Ha ha ha, so this is what the customer is worried about. From the look in your eyes just now, I thought you were mad at my daughter. After the laughter stopped, there was a brief silence. He jumped lightly and sat on the back cover of the car. Then he looked quietly at the little girl in the car. Not like that. She's with me. I used to be a soldier. Haha, I don't think so. He pulled a pack of Winston cigarettes from his pocket and took 2 from it, and handed one of them to the boy in front of him. However, Hie Hie just shook his head slightly to refuse. He doesn't have this hobby. The feeling of tobacco passing through the trachea and lungs. It's hard to breathe, as if you were deprived of air. Besides, I had already been exposed to enough second-hand smoke in those smoky places. The man did not force it. He took out a box of matches and lightly covered the cigarette butt to light it. The sun is not too hot at 8 or 9 o'clock. But it's really dazzling. So he simply lowered his eyes slightly and looked at the cigarette butt burning vigorously at his fingertips. That bit of red flickered slightly. My thoughts seemed to have drifted far away. Back to the center of the ruins. In this world, there are always fights of one kind or another, but aren't ordinary people the ones who get hurt in the end? Hie Hie carried his things and walked slowly along the long road. Chicago train station is just ahead. The taxi had already gone to an unknown destination. And the story in that car is not long. About peace and war, about love and salvation. But anyway, everything is good now. The future will be the same. Before leaving, Hie Hie gave the little girl a game coin. This was the reward he got when he and Yezii played whack-a-mole at the playground. There is a sea of flowers engraved on it. There is also a bright Sunday. Just grow up slowly, and everything will come to you in the future. Flowers, the sun, and a boy as handsome as the one in the painting. Once inside the train station, everything went smoothly. In his hand was a black magnetic card with a pattern of giant silver tree branches. CC1000 Express. Hie Hie asked the staff inside and outside the counter. The answer I got was almost always yes, but I don't know. It is exactly the same as what is said in Castle Academy Complete Strategy Detailed Explanation. Ghost Train to the real world. Only students or teachers of Castle College can see and write it. So Hie Hie walked to the reception area and sat down, putting all his belongings beside him. The only thing left is one word: wait. He leaned slightly against the back of his seat. Then he took out a pure white N96 mobile phone from his shoulder bag. This is also one of Guderian's newborn gift packages. Originally, Hie Hie wanted to give this phone to Hifukeo. But he refused it with the reason that he didn't know how to use it. I only took the Nokia phone for the elderly that was missing a dial button. It's a pity to lose it. Hie Hie turned on his cell phone, which contained 5 phone numbers. In fact, there is just one more Guderian than before. Also, Li Ruin's phone number is no longer in service. He clicked on the text message page. There are already 7 or 8 more pieces of information in it at this moment. All of them were sent by Hie Hie. This was the day before she left, and Hie Hie went to the business hall to get an overseas communication card for her. He also told her to call him if anything happened at home. It's best to send a text message. Because call charges are really expensive. Although text messaging isn't cheap, it's much better. But this made Hie Hie's heart tremble. Did something happen when I just came out of the house? There was a hint of anxiety and restlessness between his brows. But if you look closely. Brother, are you here yet? ×3 My mom made me some rice rolls for dinner. They were super delicious, but it's a pity that some people can't have them. Today's homework is a bit short, let's just do 10 more questions. Hie Hie. Will it be colder over there? If it's cold, remember to wear more clothes. That's what mom said, remember it. After watching it, all my emotions disappeared. It's a very strange feeling. Cold. It seemed like there was one before, but now that I sit down and have nothing to do, it seems more real. It's like a channel of ice water, swaying in my heart. Flooded, then disappeared, over and over again. I feel a little soft under my eye sockets and my nose feels a little sore. Looking at every word, he seemed to feel it for the first time. This is leaving home. The desertedness after the hustle and bustle. So this is what is called missing someone. That is the moment when you stop pretending to be busy. When you say goodbye to familiar things and familiar accents. The biting cold and the feeling of being unable to cry out. From now on, I will be alone in the stormy seas, and will not hear the sound of wind and rain. Hie Hie holds the phone, there was a smile on the corner of his mouth. It seems that I can see the smile of that girl behind the screen. He pressed and replied to each one. Arrive. Some people do want to eat. That's good. The temperature here is about the same as at home. Don't worry. You and your parents should also remember to be careful. It's easy to catch a cold during this season change, And as he was thinking back, he discovered. Aren't you talking about something very ordinary? I couldn't help but smile even more. Only then did I realize that when it comes to family, nothing is important or unimportant. When you raise your head slightly. Then I saw the station's dome, which looked like a church. Glass of moderate size are pieced together one by one. It should form a semicircular shape. Just like the inside of a glass ball. When the light shines through, a few rays of holiness are sprinkled down. It came like a pair of pure white wings. Brother is always here. This was the last text message he sent. Then he put the phone into his bag. Because a slightly unexpected person came over. Lu Mingfei, based on the several meetings between Hie and him, this is speculated. Although he didn't know why, he seemed to have an inexplicable emotion towards himself. It's not hostility, but it certainly doesn't feel like we want to be hand in hand, good friends. It's more like, avoiding me? He walked and stopped. His face seemed a little embarrassed and hesitant. It took a while before I got to the seat in the same row. He put down the 12-hole quilt on his back and leaned aside. He himself sat one seat away from Hie. The two hands fiddled with each other for a long time. From time to time, he would glance at Hie, who was writing in his diary. Until the long and distant bell rang in the central lobby of the station. Boom, boom, boom. It's already 12 noon. Chapter 57. The diary is finished. He closed it gently and put it in his bag. Lu Mingfei was still hesitating, and everyone around him could tell from his face that he wanted to say something. So he just took the initiative to ask. What's up? Mainly because it was 12 o'clock and I was indeed a little hungry. It would be a waste of time to sit here and wait for him to speak. Excuse me, do you know what the situation is now? He finally uttered his first words. But his eyes were still jumping around when he looked at Hie. It wasn't focused in his sight at all. It's just a question of what's going on. Doesn't he have the detailed explanation? What do you mean? Hie felt it necessary to clarify the situation. The train, CC1000, you should be in the same train as me, right? I just asked a lot of staff and they all said yes, but they all seemed to know nothing about this train. As Lu Mingfei spoke, he repeatedly checked the black magnetic card ticket in his hand. It's just a matter of pinching out a flower. Don't you have the book? Hie said as he took out the guidebook with a gold border from his bag and showed it to him. However, the other party's reaction was, embarrassing? He slowly took out a book with the same cover from his suitcase. But the book comes with a different name. The Idiot's Guide to Admission to Castle College has a special note in the lower right corner that says Lu Mingfei edition. This book only provides guidance up to this point, and then there is no further information. Moreover, the title of the book is. He held one end of the book in his left hand and pointed fiercely at the cover with his right hand. His face seemed to be filled with anger at the other person's failure to live up to expectations. Or maybe just outraged at the title. That would explain why he took the initiative to talk to me. But why does he only have such an ambiguous guidebook? Couldn't find the answer. It doesn't really matter. This train should be a special line for the college. It may not be under the management of the Railway Bureau. I don't know the exact time it will arrive. Just wait. It will come eventually. After saying that, he stood up, picked up his luggage, and prepared to go have lunch first. Then I'll be leaving first. But just as he was about to leave, the woven bag he was carrying behind him was suddenly grabbed. Looking back, it was Lu Mingfei. At this time, he was lowering his head, his buttocks still sitting on the chair, and his right hand just grabbed the handle of the toothbrush holder at the corner of the woven bag. Although his face could not be seen, one could tell from his voice that he was embarrassed and helpless. Well, as a classmate of the same class, can I borrow? Lu Mingfei was like a poor guy with a fishbone stuck in his throat, feeling uncomfortable but not knowing what to do. He spoke in a halting manner. Borrow money. Seeing his attitude, he took the opportunity to talk about what he thought was the biggest possibility. Well, it's true. But this is not really a question of whether to borrow or not. But he didn't have it either. He used the scholarship he received in advance from Guderian not only to book the amusement park. I also bought another thing. So now Hie's entire outfit actually costs less than $400. You went out without any money. When this question came out, Lu Mingfei lowered his head even more completely. I did bring it, but just now, there's only this much left. As he said this, he took out a wrinkled $20 note from his trouser pocket. Andrew Jackson's serious face was even suppressed to look a little funny. It was seized by customs, along with my PS2 discs, my youth. Hie Hie's brows were somewhat moved. It's not that I was persuaded by him, but if I keep holding and standing like this, I'm afraid I'll be watched by the crowd who don't know the truth. That. $1, just $1. Hie Hie was just about to let him stand up and speak first. Then, there was another sound behind him. Turning around, I saw that he seemed to be a beggar. A tangled, unruly mass of hair covered his face like a thicket. If it weren't for those light blue eyes that were as bright as sparks, and the plaid shirt on his body that could be seen as dark green, perhaps one would think that it was a wild man running out from some deep mountain forest. But then again, it seems quite rare for a savage to be born in Illinois, where there are far more plains and lakes than forests. The beggar shouted the classic words begging for food while looking at Hie Hie with pitiful and longing eyes. Sorry, no money. Hie Hie refused outright. Because the European man in front of him, who had all his limbs intact and was even tall and strong, didn't seem to be someone who would ever need to ask for money. Otherwise, what's the use of hands and feet? But the beggar remained unyielding. He said he lost his wallet when he was out and about, and had no identification, so he couldn't go to work. At this time, Lu Mingfei finally stood up and picked up the clothes that were scattered when he was rummaging through the suitcase. There is nothing more sad than a dead heart. I have already started thinking about how to divide $20 into 200. I heard that people can live for 3 days if they only drink water. Hey! Are you also waiting for the CC1000 Express? When saying this, the beggar suddenly changed his language to Hyuxia. And he speaks it quite fluently. He also took out a black magnetic card ticket from the side pocket of his bag. It was exactly the same as what Lu Mingfei had placed on the suitcase at that moment. The same to you. Lu Mingfei was folding clothes with his head down when he was suddenly startled by a loud voice and looked up. Then they saw a burly man with a scruffy beard and wearing slippers, smiling brightly and holding a ticket exactly the same as theirs. That's right, Finkel von Frings, an 8th-year student at Castle Academy. You should be freshman. As he spoke, he walked over and held Hie Hie and Lu Mingfei's shoulders. Then he laughed and walked towards the subway across the street. Ha ha ha, it's fate to meet you here. According to the old saying of Huaxia, if you are destined to meet, you will meet even if you are thousands of miles apart, right? So the culture of Huaxia is really profound. So, Finkel brought the two of them into the restaurant. And I got to eat my first full meal in a long time. 3 chicken burgers and an unknown number of cokes. And, a night without the noise of crowds. Of course, all of it was paid for by Hie Hie. The two people who ate and drank well claimed that they would return double when they had money after returning to school. Hie Hie didn't want to pay back double, but he was really cheated and deceived by this overly enthusiastic senior several times and had no choice. You know, there is an old saying from Hawaii that goes, if a person has no shame, he is invincible. In this way, the 3 of them spent 2 nights near the train station. They sit at the train station all the time, and when they get off work late at night, they go to a nearby discounted hourly room to squeeze in a nap. 2 beds, after a fair game of rock paper scissors, were allocated to Lu Mingfei, Hie Hie, 1 each, Finkel, and the floor. Finally, on the 3rd night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Hie Hie sat on a stool, writing in his diary. Lu Mingfei was leaning on a bench in the waiting hall, seemingly dozing off. Finkel stood in the middle of the hall, looking up at the dome and counting the glass on it. Buzz! At this moment, the heavy and high-pitched sound of a train whistle suddenly came from the distance on the railway track. When Finkel saw this, he hurriedly packed his luggage. And Lu Mingfei seemed to be awakened by the sound. He was breathing slightly heavily, his face was terrified, as if he had just woken up from an indescribable dream. When the train stopped, a man wearing a dark green conductor's uniform suddenly appeared at the ticket gate which had been empty just now. He had a flashlight in his left hand and a card reader in his right hand. There were bubbles of chewing gum in his mouth. Here I come. Finkel packed his luggage, woke up Lu Mingfei who seemed still a little unconscious, and ran to the conductor. The two seemed to be acquaintances. He also took his luggage and magnetic card ticket and slowly walked to the front of the train. The exquisite and gorgeous silver-white vine patterns bloom in the darkness of the train itself, like a behemoth returning from an ancient forest. When the card machine verified Liu Mingfei's identity, the conductor and Finkel seemed surprised. There was an inevitable look of disbelief in his eyes. It seemed as if he was instantly filled with respect for this young man who did not look particularly outstanding. Finally, it was Hie Hie's turn to swipe his card to check his ticket. With the sound of beep, the conductor's expression, which had just recovered a little, was instantly out of control. His mouth was slightly open, and he couldn't help but wipe his eyes with his sleeve and then blinked. It seemed that he was a little uncertain about everything he had seen tonight. Hie Hie. Verification passed. Hie Hie, date of birth July 14, 1991, gender male, ID number AD071422, class S. Chapter 58. No way, sir, did Instructor Guderian go to the Dragon's Nest to recruit students? He found 2S level freshmen at once. It was as if Finkel had heard something even more absurd than whales flying in the sky. I felt like I was getting close enough to see the card machine in the conductor's hand. The information above is clear. Definitely an S grade. Then there will be 3S level people in the academy, including the principal. The smile on the conductor's face seemed forced with some surprise. But the glittering light in the pupils was extremely obvious. Yes, just like in a dream woven by Morpheus. Then there was a strange silence. It seemed as if he was digesting this sudden and explosive news. I am here. At this time, from the inexplicable smoke in the distance, a burly figure with grey hair walked quickly towards them. He smiled, with the corners of his mouth raised sharply, and seemed to be in a very good mood. Welcome, and long time no see, my 2S rank students. Hie Hie and Liu Mingfei saw who was coming and nodded and called out his title. Long time no see, Instructor Guderian. But Finkel had a question mark on his face. He moved closer to Guderian, pointed at himself with his right index finger, and used his left hand to push away the long hair on his forehead. Teacher, mentor, what about me? I'm Finkel. However, the latter seemed to not see the man at all, and directly looked through him and said to the snickering conductor, everyone is here, let's get ready to go back to school. When the conductor heard this, he immediately turned serious again. He raised his right hand and gently took off the hat with the golden conductor badge on it, placed it slightly below his left shoulder, and leaned his upper body forward slightly. Respectfully said, please board the train, passengers. The CC1000 express train is about to depart. So Guderian led the three people to the only open door in front. With every step he took, the figure behind him, wearing the dark green conductor's uniform, became more blurred. When Hie Hie looked back for the last time, he could only be seen looking in the direction they left, smiling faintly. Ding-ling-ling the moment you close the car door. A burst of light bell sounds came from the smoke. And a shout-like cry. In fact, it's more like a declaration. It's like striking on the heartstrings. Falling into the ripples of the ancient well. Next stop, the final stop. Castle Academy. A train with silver-white patterns is speeding through the dark night. It's like a line of trembling notes, jumping violently on the rails. Composing a song about where we came from and where we are going. Inside the carriage, Liu Mingfei and Professor Guderian sat opposite each other across an oak table. They have changed into the Castle Academy uniforms, with white lining and dark green suit jackets with silver foil. The crimson ties are like roses among thorns, and a lush giant tree is growing in the school emblem on the chest. Finkel was still making his presence felt beside Guderian. Finally, Guderian couldn't hold it anymore. A glance over there made Finkel very happy. Teacher Guderian, you finally found me. I said that although you are old, you should still be clear-headed. How could you forget your own students, A&D? This guy became more and more excited as he talked, and he kept chattering on and on. Guderian's face was full of disappointment, and he was too lazy to even look at this student who could be demoted from A grade to F grade. Shut up, be serious. Seeing this, Finkel was like a wronged husky. He retreated timidly to a corner, pointing his index fingers at each other. I'm just trying to liven up the atmosphere. After all, the next topic is not going to be pleasant. Guderian was too lazy to pay attention to him. He turned around and looked at the two dragon slayers opposite him who would surely be outstanding in the future. After a flash of smile, he became serious again. I'm sorry, young men. There may have been a problem with the dispatch. I should have come to pick you up earlier. But it's really harmless, Right. After saying that, he pointed his head towards Urha behind him on the left. And the important thing is, what he said is actually correct. Everything that follows may break your previous cognition. This is a topic that almost requires a reshaping of your worldview to a certain extent. I hope you can stay calm. Oh, to be exact, it's you, Lu Mingfei. He picked up the cup of citrus tea in front of him, and when he said this, his eyes deliberately met Lu Mingfei's. Then he looked at Hie Hie, who was listening carefully at the side. Hie Hie should have a preliminary understanding of it. The guidebook contains quite a lot of information. Hie Hie nodded slightly, and then said slowly, "Yeah, I've basically memorized it all." It's surprising. It is true that I was surprised. After all, the history, theories, philosophy, and even some world-famous figures described in it, when compared with reality, are largely. Almost all of them are wrong. If someone is really determined to survey a certain point, then perhaps what awaits him is endless logical confusion. Just like a boy chasing after something far away, he will find out in the end, there is nothing in the distance except distance. It is also true if you remember it. Because you can never underestimate a Hie student who has gone through the college entrance examination. Memorizing things is easy. The corners of Professor Guderian's mouth rose noticeably. In fact, after seeing Hie Hie's reaction at the Regent Hotel that day, he was full of expectations for this young man. Just like now, he was not disappointed. Okay, then I'll mainly tell Lu Mingfei. Before we start, would you like a glass of Bacardi? Rum. Lu Mingfei looked at everyone present with a confused and horrified expression. Since getting on the train, he couldn't understand a word they said. It feels like guessing a riddle. They were all having a great time there. Then while playing, he wanted to pull me along. Strong liquor? I don't need that. What on earth is going on? Do you have to make it so exaggerated? Lu Mingfei had some cold sweat on his forehead, and he seemed to be afraid of the unknown about the next topic. It's like seeing a dark hole in the deep sea. Okay, let's begin. Guderian began to speak slowly. The dark woods outside the train window and the occasional flashing telephone poles seemed to merge into one, turning into a sleeping monster. It may wake up at any time and swallow up this train heading to an unknown destination in one gulp. Hie Hie was still listening carefully, not wanting to miss a single word. 3 exams, confidential documents, special degrees. And that huge painting, with the decaying giant tree holding up the cold and broken sky, its cracked branches catching all the colors that still glowed. The pitch-black giant with wings spread on the ground crawled out from the flesh and blood skeleton, stood on the throne made of heads, and let out an all-piercing roar towards the sky. Towards that giant tree, towards this absurd world. Guderian said that was the Dragon Emperor. Nidhogg. After hearing all this, Lu Mingfei was so emotional that his face was completely expressionless and he even twitched. Then, he fainted. And he was actually also shocked. The fact that his heart was beating violently at this moment was proof of that. If I still had a congenital heart disease, I would probably have to go through the process of rebirth again. But at this moment, what he felt more in his heart was the calmness and determination after obtaining the information. Because he understood better what he was going to face. Moreover, I still have no fear about it. That's enough. I don't know how long it took, I just know that the scenery outside gradually became whiter and the sunlight slowly shone into the car through the window. Until I heard the conductor's announcement on the radio that they had arrived. Castle Academy. Chapter 59. The train slowly came to a stop. But Lu Mingfei was still in a coma. His eyebrows were tightly furrowed and his lips were moving slightly. It was like talking to someone in a dream. It's like being in a place too far away from this world. In the end, it was Finkel who carried the S-level super freshman who fainted from excessive fright into the academy. The journey wasn't that long actually. But this tall and burly German man shouted "I'm tired" no less than 20 times. He looked at the places he passed along the way. The houses are almost all in the European medieval Romanesque architectural style. Magnificent, exquisite, and elegant. The huge and thick walls are covered with beautiful and flourishing carvings. Walking slowly in it, it seems as if you have fallen into the time and space of the last century. Drinking black tea and looking at the new moon. There were guards wearing knight armor standing outside the door. The 3 eventually followed Professor Guderian to a room filled with tomes. Oh, 2 to be exact. After putting Lu Mingfei down, Finkel turned around and ran away. Yes, he did escape. He was mumbling something, his face full of hope and fear that he would be in time. Even when I ran out of the door, the slippers on my right foot went directly to my calf. Guderian seemed accustomed to this. What else could this guy be doing? Afraid of working? Hie Hie was not interested in this either. After 3 days and 2 nights of getting along, he could basically see what kind of person this senior brother was. When nothing happens, he's a mean idiot. When something happens, he runs away, a mean idiot. This is Hie Hie's final evaluation. Cabinets are arranged one after another in this huge space. There is no way to guess how many books there will be. The warm-toned crystal chandelier on the ceiling emits a warm light, illuminating every corner of the room. More simple and elegant. Guderian sat in front of the desk inlaid with gold patterns and suddenly let out a long sigh. This journey is really not very friendly for an elderly person. As he spoke, he took out a purple clay teapot and a small bag of brown tea leaves completely sealed in a lavender wooden box from the cabinet under the desk. He gently shook out a little bit of it and dropped it into the teapot. It's only a few grams at most. Then he carefully packed it up and put it back. Just like an embroiderer weaving silk, every move is full of caution. This is something you'll never have again, but you have to drink a little when you're happy, right? The last time I drank was long before you were born. Guderian's eyes, which were always energetic, were inexplicably lost at this moment. My thoughts seemed to drift far away with the rising water vapor. Back to the house next to the tea garden. All year round, you will be surrounded by fresh and moving scents. What a wonderful time it was. It was like being in Wonderland. But, now only the last echoes remain in the box. With him, a loser abandoned by the times. Hie Hie sat quietly at the opposite table and looked at the burly old man in front of him. At this moment, I suddenly felt that this person. It seems to be far less lively and open than it appears on the surface. Are you lonely? Guderian paused when he heard this. But that was only for a moment, and he quickly put on his familiar smile again, and said jokingly, old people always have some memories of the past. I don't feel lonely. To put it romantically, I am completely free. Hie Hie smiled back when he saw this. Some things don't need to be investigated too deeply, but some things cannot be ignored. This time it belongs to the former. At this moment, Liu Mingfei, who was lying on the cowhide sofa, suddenly sat up. He glanced around the surroundings with a puzzled look. You're awake. Guderian drank the last sip of the cup. It refreshed me. Looking at Liu Mingfei with a smile. We've arrived, Castle College. Only then did he seem to come to his senses. He pressed his forehead with his right hand, still looking a little dazed. But I clearly heard a very loud crash, and I thought we had overturned the car. As he spoke, he looked and touched it again, still uncertain. I'm not going to the underworld, are you actually the judge? Everyone present was speechless because of his bizarre train of thought. Until Guderian coughed twice tactically. Well, this is indeed Castle College, and you fainted in the middle of the orientation until now. Liu Mingfei then recalled it again. Every word on the train, that huge painting and the little boy who makes people feel sad in the dream. Dragon. He murmured the name as if in a dream. At this time Guderian clapped his hands lightly. The door of the study opened immediately. A man with black hair and single eyelids walked in, with Yamato written all over his face. In each hand, he held a black metal box with silver-white edging. After putting down the 2 suitcases steadily, he bowed deeply to Hie Hie and Liu Mingfei with an elegant smile on his face. It seemed to show his respect. Although Japanese people seem to like to bend down and bow no matter what they do. Hello, my name is Masashi Toyama, and I'm a psychological counselor at Castle College. It is an honor to see 2S level freshmen appear in the academy at the same time before I take office, no, before I am still alive. Guderian seemed to agree with this statement. He couldn't help but nod his head twice. Okay, you have to prove it to the 2 future stars of our academy first. Hie Hie and Liu Mingfei were both a little confused. Prove what? Proof of the evidence that dragons exist in the world. After hearing this, Masashi Fukuyama bowed slightly to Professor Guderian and picked up one of the boxes. After unlocking the fingerprint and password, the box opened. Inside is a layer upon layer of foam structure. After about half of it was lifted, a pitch-black object appeared. Smooth and sharp. It even reflects light under the lamp. It was about the size of a boy's hand, but it looked like an indestructible archive shield. These are the scales from a dragon's body, discovered in the ancient city of Lulan in Xinjiang, Daxia. As he spoke, he took out 2 guns from the inner pocket of his coat. If you look closely, you will find that the combat equipment straps are clearly sewn directly into his coat. Try. His smile was still elegant and indifferent, as if he was talking about something that happened between children. But when Hie Hie took it, he felt its cool touch and weight. But it's definitely not what a toy gun should have. This is... Hie Hie still couldn't help asking. This is a Walter PPK pistol. Yes, it's the one used by the famous secret agent. Masashi Toyama sounded like he was joking, but his words were filled with unquestionable certainty. Real guns. Liu Mingfei simply couldn't understand the thoughts of these lunatics. Even in this free country, was it really meaningful to just take out a real gun and try out such a boring thing? He made a bitter face, but slowly raised his hand. I assumed the posture as the instructor taught me during the military training test firing. The index finger is lightly pressed next to the trigger. 3 points in a straight line, aiming at the target. Bang! There was a loud bang. It's like a huge rock suddenly falls from the sky and hits you next to it. A bullet hit the scales accurately, creating a line of brilliant fireworks. Then it bounced directly towards the window. A big hole exploded. The problem is, he hasn't even fired yet. Liu Mingfei slowly turned around. Following the sound, I looked to the left behind him. A young man stood in the most perfect shooting posture, with the black muzzle of the gun pointing at the unharmed scales. Bang! Another shot. Still the same result. But above the young man's expression, which was dull and calm, were those eyes. There was clearly that moment. There flashed a golden light that burned forever against the world. Chapter 60. Really, really amazing. This was modified by the people in the equipment department. It had no effect when used for the first time. And judging from the sparks from the 2 shots, they both hit the same place. Toyama Masashi's eyes lit up and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. As he spoke, he clapped his hands respectfully. It really deserves to be an S rank. Professor Guderian stood aside with his arms folded, smiling proudly. It was as if he was praising him. Hie Hie slowly put down his hand. He had to admit that the recoil of this gun was amazing. Just 2 shots made his hands numb. But precisely because of this, the small black scales not far away are even more terrifying. This weapon, which was almost as powerful as the short-range RPG-7 rocket launcher, could only produce a few sparks. Excuse me, what is the structure of this scale? Hie Hie walked closer slowly and gently touched the scales with his right hand. It's slippery, as if there was a very fine layer of oil on it. It was so cold that it even prickled my hands. The touch of cast iron is so tough and chilling. As you can see, there is no tool that can cut it, and there is an unknown structure on its surface that seems to be able to prevent any electronic equipment from seeing it. Masashi Toyama shrugged and spread his hands, seeming to be confused and helpless about this. But there is always hope and expectation. There was a gleam of light in his dark brown eyes. This is also a major research topic in the academy right now, and it is said that there has been a major breakthrough. Professor Guderian, who was watching quietly at the side, also nodded slightly. It seems that it is no longer a rumor. That's right. In fact, we have found a place that may have alchemical weapons that can cut off this kind of dragon scales. Only. Guderian paused in the middle of his speech and looked meaningfully at the 2S class in front of him. He didn't say anything after that. Seems to be stuck in some thought and decision. At this time, Liu Mingfei was standing next to the leather sofa, holding the Walter in his hand. But now it has been put down and leaning against the side of the leg. Although he did not test fire, he heard the gunshot not far away from him. It seems to still be ringing in my ears at this moment. With such power, there is no doubt about the intensity of the recoil and shock. He couldn't help but look down at the heavy and exquisite silver-white pistol in his hand. A strange question suddenly popped up in my mind. If it were me, could I fire 2 shots in quick succession? Liu Mingfei himself was confused. Why would he consider this issue? Wouldn't it be better if you didn't have to test it yourself? Yes, this is the best. He smiled thankfully. He had already put down the dragon scale. He had just used almost all his strength to try to bend it a little bit. The result was that his palms were almost covered with blood. Will we face creatures with such strong shells in the future? Dragon, his fists were clenched so tightly that they made a crackling sound. I don't know if it's because of fear. Or was it too determined? Then let's look at the second proof. Masashi Toyama steadily placed the foam materials layer by layer on top of the dragon scale, then carefully locked the box and set a password for fear of any big movements. Maybe it was afraid that the dragon scales that were immune to even rockets would be damaged. Then, after going through the same process again, he opened another black suitcase with silver thread edging. What came into view made the two S-class people who were new to the new world take a step back. It was a cylindrical glass bottle. Like the one Dr. Henry Frankenstein used to hold his organs in Frankenstein. It is filled with a pale yellow formalin solution. A milky white piece of meat floated in the middle of the bottle. To be more precise, it looks more like a lizard that has shed its skin. But the decisive difference is that this thing has a pair of membranous wings of the same color on its back, slightly bent to protect the front of its body. The skeleton can be clearly seen through the shallow layer of flesh on the epidermis. There are some imperceptible small bumps on the surface of the whole body, arranged neatly on the skin, and there is a slight redness on the tip of each bump. Long, thin whiskers float along with the solution at the corners of its wide mouth. This thing appears to be dead. But it seems more like sleeping peacefully. The curled-up body is like a baby afraid of the cold. This. Lu Mingfei pointed at the strange-looking creature in front of him with his right hand, his mouth trembling and unable to speak. Just like a stutterer at the supermarket checkout. After counting the prices, he suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the salesperson's money-counting machine with an urgent look on his face. Fight, fight, fight. After fighting for a long time without achieving anything, the police arrived. And the stutterer actually just wanted to get a discount. Fortunately, everyone present could understand what he meant, including Hie Hie. And this is what he wanted to ask. Excuse me, what is this? Masashi Toyama held the upper and lower sides of the glass jar with his hands respectively. In order to see it more clearly, he moved it closer to the two of them. The tone is natural, yet it somehow makes people feel that its charm comes from ancient times. This is Dragon. Although Hie Hie was prepared for this answer, he was still shocked when he heard it with his own ears. For some unknown reason, he slowly moved closer, as if he was thinking about something. This is the dragon. At this time, Lu Mingfei was already stroking his forehead, trying his best to protect his own worldview. To be precise, it's a red dragon cub, a noble third generation. It was obtained by a snake catcher in India in 1796 from the belly of an anaconda. Dragons of this level cannot die or be destroyed. They exist forever, and it will be resurrected. Hie Hie and Lu Mingfei both quietly looked at the red dragon cubs floating randomly in the solution. They all seemed to be in some kind of trance. There was no trace of romance in his expression, it was all as heavy as the long night. At this moment, the only sound that could be heard in the study was the slow rocking of the pendulum clock on the far left. Ding, ding. Long and profound. The interval between the two swings was not long, but it seems like spanning thousands of years. At this moment, everyone was in inexplicable silence. Those pupils soaked in formalin solution. Suddenly opened, the golden light even illuminates the surrounding solution. He flapped his wings and short limbs and fluttered around in the jar, like a small fish thrown onto the shore, flapping its wings desperately in an effort to jump into the water. All he saw was cruelty. At this moment, he seemed to have seen something, and the golden light in his eyes became even brighter. He stretched his neck and opened his jaw towards Lu Mingfei. Ignoring the backflow of the solution, the dragon flame had already ignited in the throat. When everyone saw this scene, they instantly fell into panic. Lu Mingfei shouted, raised his hands to cover his eyes, and quickly retreated. Professor Guderian seemed to have not yet recovered from his shock. He stood there like an iron tower, staring blankly. And Masashi Toyama, as the person who still held this thing, was completely at a loss. His left hand shook violently, and as his strength loosened, the glass jar suddenly flipped sideways and hit the ground. He wanted to bend down and catch it again. But at this moment, my whole body became inexplicably stiff. I don't know where it came from. Not a human voice. It seems to come from the world, from the god of death. A judgment that comes from beyond fate. A pair of hands had already caught the falling glass jar. The red dragon cub in the jar now had its eyes wide open, filled with the deepest fear. Deep in his bones and in the memories of his blood, there is now only one golden dragon eye that is larger than the universe. and a sword at the beginning of the abyss. Sword he desperately pushed and bumped against the other side of the person outside the glass jar. Because of that person's back. The golden dragon's eyes were clearly flashing with a desperate sword light of destruction. At this moment, the poor little guy wished he could never woke up. Chapter 61. In the end, the red dragon cubs still turned their backs to the boy outside the glass jar. The solution poured into his mouth easily ended the hundreds of years of waiting for recovery. He returned to his original state. Curled up like a baby, fast asleep. But in fact, things have been different since just now. His golden pupils, covered by his eyelids, were now dim. It's like being stripped of all its glory. In the blood vessels beneath the epidermis, all purity of power disappeared in an instant. It's like eaten and carried away. This almost shows that this is a noble and fragile third-generation cub. From this moment on, perhaps forever will be trapped in that under the gaze of the golden dragon's eyes. An eternal dream. There will be no day of awakening. Hie Hie seemed to have fallen asleep suddenly just now and fell into that dream again. The same endless questions, the same sacred and majestic golden dragon eyes. The two of them continued to stare at each other tirelessly. You, what exactly are you? Silly question. Who would I be? Who can be me? I'm Hie Hie. Why bother with what? It's also what the world is all about. This seemed to be the first time he answered this question. It seems like it has been repeated countless times. But still patient and natural. As soon as these words were spoken, everything fell silent. The inexplicable sound suddenly stopped. Where does the wind come from? Hie Hie felt as if there was a sudden breeze blowing behind him, pushing him slowly forward. This time, the dragon's eyes in the dream seemed even more dazzling and huge than usual. He inexplicably wanted to stretch out his hand. He was too close to the abyss at the center of the pupil. I really want to get closer. In. A voice calling coming through countless eternities. Just to hum softly in his ears. Stay beside it for a while. There is a sword here, but... Can? Ah! Did you guys see that? Suddenly, a sharp scream came to my ears. Even if you saw a ghost you wouldn't be able to yell like this. The sound was as shaky as a car drifting on a mountain road. Hie Hie seemed to have just woken up from a long dream. Then he found himself holding the glass jar in his hand. The red dragon cub inside was still curled up, facing the other side opposite to itself, with its head lowered. Lu Mingfei was raising his trembling right hand, pointing at the red dragon, his expression even distorted. How so? Guderian's eyes, which were always full of energy, now seemed to be covered by a layer of light grey gauze. Almost godless. It was as if he was stunned. At this moment, Toyama Masashi's hands were still shaking, and his elegant appearance was gone, even barbaric. Long Yan. It's Long Yan. Damn it. The label of his awakening date clearly says 2077. What the hell did those people in the archive do to me? This could kill people. The hair he had combed on his temples fell down and blocked his eyes because of this intense and almost screaming behavior. He looked like a savage from an Indian tribe. No. That's not what I meant. Guderian suddenly waved his hand, and then turned his gaze to the two S-level boys. He saw everything very clearly, the ferocious look of the red dragon cub when it saw Lu Mingfei. The dragon flame that almost burst out. Is this a bloodline summon? It shouldn't be wrong. He paced rapidly on the spot, seemingly talking to himself. But, right after, Hie Hie caught the glass jar, and then the noble third-generation species. Red dragon, it seems like, fear. Absolute fear. I was so frightened that I didn't even dare to look at it, and all I wanted was to escape. Come on, that's 3 generations. For a moment, Guderian didn't know which to be surprised about first. It's like the 3 kingdoms war in my head. The burning of red cliffs almost caused his computer to crash. You guys are really amazing. It took him a while to come back to his senses, as if he had been thinking about it for a long time. Then just say this. As he spoke, an indescribable excitement, or should I say ecstasy, immediately took over his head. He was like a Siberian brown bear, and he hugged Hie Hie and Lu Mingfei in his arms. Incredible! Incredible! The old man laughed so heartily that his voice kept floating and colliding in the study. Lu Mingfei was confused and wondered if this old man was stupid. Or am I just stupid? And Hie Hie was still holding the glass jar in his hand. Lowered his head and looked at quietly. In fact, he is the one who wants to know what happened most. The last picture in his memory was when the red dragon cub opened its eyes. The burning golden pupils seemed to evaporate everything. Someone seemed to say something, just one word. And then, I had a dream, and it was still that dream. It seems to be the same as before. It seems that something has changed. Then the dream ended, and when he came to his senses, the red dragon cub in the jar had returned to its original state. When I looked at him again, for some reason there was no trace of his majesty. It was as if it had really turned into a milky white piece of meat. Hie Hie couldn't help but scratch his hair, his mind was so confused and depressed. It was like having the knowledge of half the universe stuffed into me all at once. Ha ha ha, all right. My two dear future stars, do you have any questions? Professor Guderian seemed to have finally laughed enough, and slapped Hie Hie and Lu Mingfei on the shoulders with his hands, but his excited tone remained unchanged. I have a question. Can I drop out of school right now? Lu Mingfei on the right raised his hand, looking impatient and determined. The old man was obviously disappointed after hearing this. Well, yes, the academy can even send it directly to your doorstep by special plane. However, if you choose to drop out, you will have to undergo memory erasure. That is to say, everything about this school will disappear from your memory. These are stipulated in the alchemical scroll Abraham Bloodline Contract, that is, the contract you signed on the train. Guderian patiently and gently patted Lu Mingfei's shoulder with his right hand rhythmically, as if to comfort him. Although to others it seems more like brainwashing. Besides, are you sure you want to miss dragon slaying? Slaying a dragon? The only way to see the real world. What a cool thing it is. As expected, Lu Mingfei's determination soon softened. His wavering gaze showed his hesitation. Then, just 2 days first. When Guderian heard this, his eyes immediately lit up with excitement. 2 big hands held the 2 young men and walked out of the study. That's great. Don't worry, I have already analyzed the training plans for both of you. You will definitely become true, strong, and even great S level in the future. Toyama Masashi only came to his senses at this moment, and saw that the glass bottle containing the red dragon cub specimen had been placed on the desk by Hie Hie. He observed it from a safe distance for a long time, and only after confirming that it was really dead, or asleep, did he put it back into the suitcase safely. Fortunately, everything went well. But, isn't this glass jar a little light? It's an illusion. Guderian and the other 2 had already left the exquisite and elegant building. Walking on the road paved with orderly and beautiful crimson cobblestones, surrounded by neatly trimmed lawns. The air is so fresh that it even makes you feel intoxicated. The breeze occasionally blows across the lawn, creating layers of waves. The big bell on the church in the distance was ticking slowly, occasionally startling dozens of pigeons to fly around. Sometimes it lands on the roof of a house, and sometimes it flies away into the distance. Everything seems to be fine, except... I have walked quite a distance, why can't anyone see it? Is it the holiday? But the guide mentioned that there doesn't seem to be anything happening during this period, right? At this moment, those 4 words suddenly popped up in Hie Hie's mind. Could it be? Bang! Following a gunshot. Professor Guderian, who was walking a little ahead, suddenly had a bright red spot on his temple. Like a brilliant rose. The petals scattered and splashed on the faces of the 2 young men behind him. Headshot. Fall down. There is no doubt that the sudden die. Chapter 62. A shrill alarm suddenly sounded. It constantly bombards those exquisite buildings and floats between the leaves and grass. Professor Guderian had collapsed in front of the 2 teenagers, with bright red blood seeping from beneath his grey hair. Soaked in the soil, it becomes a different color among the green. The sun broke through the clouds and the light poured down. When the light shone on the top of the church in the distance, a cross-shaped flash of light suddenly appeared. It is far more dazzling than the cross with Jesus nailed to the top of the building. Run! At this moment, a voice rang out from the building that had just been built, extremely urgent. Only then did Hie Hie come to his senses. He quickly kicked Lu Mingfei, who was still in a dazed state, away, then rolled backwards and hid behind a tree nearby. Bang! After coin-sized bullet holes appeared where they had been standing. Only then did this extremely penetrating sound reach their ears. Lu Mingfei was kicked away and fell to the ground in a Ping Shaluyan style. Before I could say anything, I saw the bullet hole where I was standing. Instinctively, he stood up quickly and rolled over to hide in a narrow passage nearby. With his back pressed tightly against the wall, his breathing became a little rapid. Dead, someone's dead. His mind was now a mess, swaying in the already small space. Since entering this place, it seems that there are few things he can understand. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, all around them were the sounds of gunfire and explosions. Figures wearing blue and red combat uniforms were shooting at each other in various buildings and alleys. Then there are individual high-explosive grenades, shoulder-fired rocket launchers, grenades. Is this a university? Insurgency? Terrorist attack? Am I really not in the very center of a culling war? This was the only thought in the mind of the weak, helpless, and even a little stupid Lu Mingfei. Hie Hie, hiding behind the tree, was observing the flash of light on the top of the church. The person who just told them to run was Masashi Toyama. He had just run out of the exquisite medieval building. But at this moment, he had already been shot dead by a team of people in black combat uniforms. Finally, after waiting for about half an hour, all sounds subsided. There were bloody corpses everywhere, especially in the most empty parking lot in front. It is estimated that there will be more than 40 bodies. In an environment with no cover, anyone running towards that place becomes a target. He became a moving dead body in the eyes of snipers on both sides. The one on the church should be one of them. Now it's gone. This means that the war is almost coming to an end. Hie Hie recalled the reasons for all this, which are all explained in the guide, Freedom Day Frigga Bullet Anesthetic Suspended Death. Although it is stated very clearly, the facts seem to be even more real and explosive. But, it seems pretty good? Thinking of this, his eyes turned to the psychological instructor Masashi Toyama, who had fallen down not far away. There was no sound of gunfire on the battlefield at this moment, only the smell of blood carried by the wind. Both sides seemed to calm down at the same time. No way. Hey! Choose a hang. The war seems to be ending soon. A powerful and magnetic voice suddenly came from the loudspeaker in the church. There was a sense of lingering desire in his voice, as if he was waiting for some tacit invitation. Yeah, but it's far from over, right? The echo rang out from the high-rise building across a parking lot. The voice was a little cold, but the fighting spirit was no less. Of course, the faith of Tyr is the main theme of this war. Invitations come in form. The men in the church were obviously delighted by this and were eager to fight. So what are you waiting for, in the middle of the parking lot? I agree. I have another knife here. A girl almost took down your flag just now. What about you? Same, the sword is Murasame and the girl is the sniper that gives you the most headaches. That's pretty evenly matched, but unfortunately I will be the winner in the end. Let's get started. The sound stopped abruptly at this point. After a while, a person walked out from the tall building and the church door. On the left, the dazzling golden hair looked even more luxurious in the sunlight, and the ice blue eyes on the three-dimensional and handsome face like an ancient Greek sculpture were even colder at this moment. He looked like a nobleman from medieval Europe. It fits in with the surrounding environment. On the right, a black windbreaker rustled, jet black hair as deep as the abyss looked like floating light, and a stern face without any emotions was filled with the words "Keep away from me." Like a killer. Lu Mingfei hid in the narrow passage, revealing one eye and quietly observing the two people who were gradually approaching in the center of the parking lot. He seemed to have heard the name Chu Zihang before, but for a moment he couldn't seem to remember it. But he was still glad that everything seemed to be finally coming to an end. I don't know when all the bodies were cleared away, and he was the only one left. Hie Hie, who had been hiding behind the tree, was now missing. He couldn't help but touch his butt, the place where he had just been kicked was still sore. I couldn't help but complain in my heart. Although you said you were saving me, your foot was really heavy. At this time, the parking lot is in the center. The two men were about 10 meters apart, holding a long knife and a short knife in their hands respectively. Remember to try your best, even though victory is mine. Let's get started. As soon as he finished speaking, Caesar's toes suddenly increased in strength, and in an instant he almost rushed in front of Chu Zihang. His golden hair flew backwards with the rushing wind, and the determination in his ice blue eyes was like that of a ruthless monarch, transforming into a lion with flowing golden light. Unstoppable. Chu Zihang suddenly raised the long sword named Murasame in his hand upside down and held it close to his elbow. The left foot stepped forward onto the ground, as if embedded in it. When Caesar rushed in front of him, he immediately used his elbow to chop Dicturtle with a bang, splashing brilliant sparks. What followed was an absolutely swift and fierce close combat. With great force and power, every blow on the opponent's blade could slightly push it down. On the one hand, he was agile and cunning, with sharp movements, and every strike of his sword was aimed at the flaws. Liu Mingfei hid aside and watched with great interest, thinking, with these two people's skills, why don't they become international mercenaries? At this moment, he suddenly noticed footsteps behind him. Looking back, a figure in red combat uniform was already standing in front of him. Above the cold eyes, the dark red hair is stunning and moving. Liu Mingfei's violently beating heart was proof of this. There was a surprised smile on his face, but he froze immediately after seeing clearly. I don't know if it's for the girl in front of me, or the pistol in her hand that was pointed at her with a cold glow. Yes, it's me. Liu Mingfei raised his hands above his head, surprise and fear constantly rotating in his heart. The surprise and the person in front of him were clearly Nono, who had always appeared in his mind in the past few days. Fear of. At this moment, no trace of the previous scene could be seen from the dark muzzle of her gun. It was at this moment that he suddenly realized that his surprise seemed to be unreasonable. It's me? What is I? The girl in front of him had nothing to do with him. Could he be considered a benefactor? Helped me escape from the Shura field? No, maybe other people don't care at all. At most, we've only known each other for a few hours, which is better than being strangers. Passerby. I'm a freshman, master. As Liu Mingfei spoke, his head began to droop again and his eyes began to wander. Interestingly, at gunpoint, he was still hesitating. Nyanyo looked at Liu Mingfei, who was at a loss in front of her, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. Just when he was planning to let this troublesome junior brother hide behind him. Not far away in the opposite direction, a flash of light from a lens suddenly passed by. It's the sniper who's already aiming. And the other party was supposed to be her prey. It should be so. Get down. Without time to think, Nyanyo could only ask Liu Mingfei, who was still standing in front of him, to lie down, and his index finger quickly pulled the trigger. Bang! A tense, life-or-death situation. 2 shots from the Walter PPK pistol cut through the airflow and pierced into everyone's eardrums. As the sound faded away, the two fell to the ground one after another. Caesar, Chu Zihang. In the end, they only saw a figure rushing out from the darkness that the sun could not penetrate. In a flash, it was within 10 meters. Fire 2 shots in a row. The bullets pierced through the heart, splashing into 2 blood-red lotuses. Chapter 63. In the center of the parking lot, 2 figures fell. Fallen into silence. The girls, wearing red and black combat uniforms respectively, put their fingers on the trigger. But at this moment, he didn't have the strength to pull the trigger. It was because after firing 2 shots, the extremely fast figure sank into the darkness again. No one knew who that person was. All I saw was the tail of a brown windbreaker. Nyanyo quickly pulled Liu Mingfei over and leaned against the wall with him. And I continued to observe every corner I could see. There was shock between her cold and beautiful eyes. She didn't even see how the man suddenly rushed in and killed the 2 guys. On the other side, the girl in black combat uniform had already picked up the sniper rifle and fled. Probably looking for a new sniping site. Nono held the relatively small Colt pistol tightly in both hands. Then he looked towards the parking lot, and ordered Liu Mingfei to help her guard behind her. Of course the good student obeyed and looked to the other end. But he was very confused. Just now, Nyanyo asked him to lie down, and he did so subconsciously. Immediately afterwards, 2 gunshots were heard. Then he saw the 2 men who had been fighting fiercely in the center of the parking lot suddenly fall down. Judging from the sound, it seemed to be done at close range. Someone actually managed to kill them. Could it be the legendary crooked-mouthed Dragon King? Or, could it be a ghost? Thinking of this, he felt a chill down his spine. What's going on? Liu Mingfei looked at the other side of the narrow road at a loss. Finally, he couldn't help but nudged Nyanyo with his elbow and asked this question. But the other party seemed to not want to pay any attention to him and did not move at all. Still keeping the muzzle of the gun level, his index finger on the trigger. The sight attempts to glimpse the tide in the darkness. It seems that if you don't pay attention you will be swallowed by it. She had roughly guessed who did it. No one in this academy could kill 2 people instantly like he did just now and then retreat safely. What's more, it was those 2 people. Unless the principal comes. Then it should be only that person, that. It makes it impossible to profile a real person at all. But I didn't expect that he would get involved. More importantly. And possess such strength. What level will he be? Lu Mingfei behind him was still asking questions from time to time. Is there a rebellion going on in this school? Or are we on the war front of some country? Are you one of the blonde ones? Who killed those 2 people? One after another, they talk incessantly. It's more like mumbling. He would poke me with his elbow from time to time after every sentence. She swore. If the current situation does not allow it, I'll show him the Israeli boxing I just learned on TV yesterday. Fortunately, he seemed tired of talking to himself. In a flash, all that could be heard was the soft chirping of a few white doves flying by. The sun was slightly bright, and everything seemed to have returned to the time before the war began. A few shimmering white shadows passed through the gaps between the trees and stopped at the fingertips. The petals were blown by the wind and rose towards the sky, like a dream bubble. Along with the boy's slightly trembling voice. You said, will we die? Maybe. The dark red-haired girl only gave him her back and 2 words. Clear and cold, without rhyme or source. But you will die behind me. A young man's heartstrings are like this, just trembling, but still so easy to pluck. Why? He was looking forward to what would happen next. Even this breath is all about death. The girl in front of him finally turned around slowly and looked at him straight in the eye. Her eyes seemed to be filled with roses in the mist. There was a smile on the corner of his pretty mouth. Lu Mingfei suddenly felt that the sunlight was so dazzling that it made the person in front of him seem out of reach. It seems to be far away in the horizon. Because of what? His impatience was unreasonable and had no reason. However, there is always an inexplicable hope driving me. What if, just in case? Bang! A loud gunshot shattered the boy's thoughts. In a trance, he seemed to see the stairwell not far away. The blinding flash passed in an instant. A bullet penetrated the hurricane and slowly came towards him. With the unexpected encounter and the scattered summer leaves. Yes, he could even see the pattern of the bullet. The eerie crimson bullet seemed to announce the fate of whoever it hit. Exchange, brother. At this moment, the voice that I often heard recently sounded again. The boy in a pure black tuxedo stood to the side of the bullet. The airflow passed before his eyes. This time he was laughing, as if he was watching a joke. It's like telling a joke. Exchange? Exchange for what? She's going to die. Lu Mingfei wanted to do something, but his body did not respond for a long time. Strange, why can't it move? He wants to move. But my feet and hands seemed to be filled with lead, and then locked with chains with iron balls, the more I tried to move. But the more I tremble. Wrong. What can I do? Or dare to do what? Standing in front of her? But what if he wasn't aiming at her at all, or what if he missed the target, and then she ran forward and died? Just in case. The little boy watched the bullet getting closer and closer, and looked at Lu Mingfei's dejection and helplessness. I don't know what is in those golden eyes. It seems that the answer is no. The moment the words fell, the only sound that could be heard was the whoosh sound of the bullet passing through the airflow. A bullet went straight into the throat of the beautiful girl in front of him. Bright red blood spurted out instantly. She was almost knocked against the wall by the impact. His lips opened slightly and quickly turned pale. As if he had used up the last of his strength, he sat sideways against the wall. Blood flowed to the fingertips and dripped onto the ground. A small splash of water. But fortunately, her smile was still there. She looked at Lu Mingfei and said in a hoarse voice, "See, I was right." After saying this, there was no more breath. Lu Mingfei still stared blankly at the fallen Nyonyo. He stretched out his right hand and touched his inexplicably wet face. His hands were also stained with blood. Ah, it just splashed on my face. My head hurts. It can't be wiped off. My chest feels stuffy. Whatever. Never mind. He slowly walked out of the narrow path. His face was calm and peaceful. The brown pupils were highlighted with a few bloodshot veins. Looking quietly at the stairwell where the flash had appeared before. At this time, a person slowly walked down from the emergency passage of the building. The light brown windbreaker was spotless, and the jet black hair fluttering in the breeze looked like the decree of death. In his left hand he holds an American-made Barrett M82AL sniper rifle, known as the King of Snipers. Its original owner had long since died and was leaning against the wall of the stairwell. In his right hand he held a Walter PPK pistol. He slowly walked in front of Liu Mingfei. Those frosty eyes seemed to contain ice that could freeze everything. There was a piercing indifference between his eyebrows. Liu Mingfei recognized him, and the bloodshot in his pupils became even more intense. The tone seemed to carry the rage of a giant beast. Why? The inexplicably hoarse voice seemed to have the tremendous power of a king. Then there was no response from the visitor. He just threw the Barrett in his left hand towards him with force. It landed right at his feet. Then he raised the Walter pistol in his right hand and pointed it squarely at his heart. Take it. The clouds are light and the breeze is gentle. Liu Mingfei didn't say much. He slowly bent down and picked up the Barrett. Pull the bolt, push the bolt. The bullet is loaded. He suddenly lifted it up. The pitch-black muzzle of the gun was also pointed at the other party. The man was even smiling. The breeze blew across the two young men's dark temples, flowing into their eyes that were filled with murderous intent. Like a fire in the east wind. The more it burns, the more intense it becomes. You are always like this. You explode with useless anger only after you lose something. This is what Hie Hie said, as if talking to himself. Come on, give it a try. Try to kill me. This is also what Hie Hie said, with a smile that was defiant and full of encouragement. Chapter 64. Liu Mingfei's finger was on the trigger. The backs of his hands were already covered with blue veins. And Hie Hie just looked at him quietly, waiting for a decision. The two sides maintained this posture for a long time, like two medieval dueling sculptures. On top of a tall building in the distance, a huge round mechanical clock is embedded on its top. The slightly rusty second hand moves slowly. Already crossed the 9 position. But there will not be any stagnation, and it will continue to move forward. 175958, 175959. Clang. The long and heavy bell sound seemed to come from across 100 years. It's all over the college. At that moment, 2 more gunshots that were insignificant in comparison rang out almost simultaneously. The pitch-black muzzle spewed out determined bullets. Represents the choices of 2 teenagers. They all fell on the crimson gravel road. The blood flowing from the chest was spread on it. More gorgeous. In the distance, the sun is about to set. Perhaps there will be a field of lavender to witness everything. Show him the last glimmer of light. Hie Hie lay on the stones and stretched out his left hand to touch the blood on his chest. There is no sense of reality. Instead, the overwhelming drowsiness swept over my whole body. Everything in front of me began to blur, and the glow of the sunset seemed to be rippling on the water. After this, he probably understood something. In this college, the strongest and most influential people should be those 2 people, Caesar and Chu Zihang. This is equivalent to the fact that there may be 2 groups of people with disputes due to this reason. This may have some impact on his life in this college. Especially after this incident, it may be even worse. But, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it's always like this around me. There is no need to do anything to please one side. It should even be said that this is more free, isn't it? But at least, he was sure of one thing. This protagonist can only be an occasional madman. Sometimes crazy, sometimes deadly. But this is also so ridiculous. Only after losing something will we try desperately to make up for it. Kill the perpetrators, kill the source of despair, kill everything that is in the way. It is called, you see, I would spend a quarter of my life for them. Even though they are dead. But I am so trying and sad. That's right, the prerequisite for opening this state is a tragedy. A tragedy that was so painful and agonizing that it made him tremble. Perhaps this is his fate. The steps beneath every bit of power are carved out of the helplessness born out of all kinds of hesitation. The afterglow before my eyes has completely disappeared. Hie Hie closed his eyes. Despair? Pain? Helplessness? It just so happens that I came here to destroy these so-called destinies. Is that crazy? There was endless darkness in sight. But there is always a ray of light guiding us. He smiled. Then become a madman. In the dream, Hie Hie followed the light and flew very far and for a long time. Finally, they arrived at an abyss. It was only a hand's length away from him. It was like being split in the darkness. It is boundless and vast, so vast that one cannot even see how far it extends. He raised his hand, a strong desire prompting him to touch the dazzling light in front of him. It seems that as long as you can touch the stars, you can achieve everything. But when he stretched out his hand, the distance between him and her was less than half a centimeter. A powerful repulsive force directly bounced it away. Countless darkness rushed towards it in an instant. But it was always away from the tiptoe position. He was pushed in the opposite direction uncontrollably like a meteor. As a result, the beam of light became smaller and smaller. I don't know how long I flew in this state. It was not until Hie's eyes were almost closed that he realized it. So that's where he was just now. That's where the golden dragon pupil is. Hie. It seems like someone is calling. I could faintly hear my own name in my ears. Slowly open your eyes. In front of him was an old man with grey hair, squatting beside him and patting his face gently. A good evening, Professor Guderian. Hie sat up and held his forehead. Not shocked at all. After all, I know the truth about all this. The anesthetic seemed to still have some lingering effect, but I came to my senses after a while. Everything before my eyes became much clearer. Looking around, I saw doctors and nurses in white coats injecting medicine into the dead bodies on the ground. The magical thing is that just a short while after the injection, they all came back to life. And they chatted happily. The conversation started about who killed him. Talk about who will win this war. Hie, what's going on between you and Lu Mingfei? Why are you involved in this? Professor Guderian saw that Hie had come to his senses. I asked the reason in confusion. That's what happened after he fell to the ground. Hie told him the whole story according to the facts. Including the final scene, of course. Just slightly modified. When they were competing for the final winner, they shot at the same time, resulting in the death of both parties. After hearing this, Guderian's face instantly lit up with joy, and he pointed to the two bodies lying quite close to each other in the parking lot. You mean to say that you killed those two people over there by yourself? And then he took care of the sniper and that little witch at the same time. He became more and more excited as he spoke, and his beard was about to stand up when he got to the end. And you died together with Lu Mingfei, who was also at the S rank like you. Hie didn't expect him to be so surprised. There was some hesitation in answering. Can't I do that myself? Yeah, what's wrong? Unexpectedly, Guderian opened his big hand and slapped Hie on the back again and again. Look up to the sky and laugh. Ha 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 ha, you are worthy of being the S student I found. I have avenged your teacher. You must choose my dragon genealogy on the course selection list, and I will give you the highest credits. Suddenly, the surroundings became much quieter. The old man and the young man finally came to their senses and looked around. I saw that the students, who were wearing red and black combat uniforms, had taken off their hoods. They seemed to be no more than 18 or 19 years old. After a round of shocked whispers, everyone looked at Hie with cold scrutiny. But in fact, most of the time it is probably because of reluctance. Everyone has heard it, that person is S level. I don't know from which dragon's lair this S-class creature was cut out. So we can defeat them. Seems reasonable? Did you really do this? Someone in the crowd asked the question, and his tone was full of disbelief and even suspicion. In other words, a desperate gamble hoping that the doubt will come true. After one person asked the question, others followed suit, chattering in agreement. To be honest, Hie had no interest in explaining anything to them. The facts are right in front of us. But some people just want to pretend to be blind. If I were to say it, I just wanted to see the gap between myself and the strongest in this academy. Then they were all killed accidentally. Will these people believe it? He doesn't believe it himself. Moreover, there are deeper reasons. I just don't want anyone to mess up the final scene I designed. Quiet. Guderian finally spoke at this time, and his roar instantly silenced everyone. He was always energetic, but at this moment, his eyes were scanning the students around him with anger. Then he stretched out a hand and pointed at Hie who was about to break through the crowd. Not admitting defeat is the most shameful thing. If you don't believe he did it, then look at his right hand. Right hand? Everyone looked over there, and Hie himself couldn't help but look down. That modified Volter pistol. He even surprised himself. I didn't notice at all just now that the gun was still in my hand. It seems that the numbness has not yet subsided. Who among you can do this? Whether fighting or not, the weapon is always in your hands. This is something only a warrior can do. And just based on this point, there is enough evidence to believe it. Chapter 65. As soon as these words were spoken, there was an inexplicable silence. Some people looked at Hie Hie with a slightly different look in their eyes, while others gritted their teeth and clenched their fists, with a look of stubbornness and helplessness on their faces. When Liu Mingfei woke up, he saw the scene around him and was completely confused. Like a monkey that is suddenly thrown into the water and then quickly fished out. What was even more bizarre was that several corpses he had seen on the ground before were now standing among the crowd. It also includes Professor Guderian, and Hie Hie. He was totally bewildered. The last scene in his memory was clearly him and the dark-haired boy exchanging gunfire. The bright red blood bloomed and stained the lapels. Without a doubt, it hit. Just as he was shot in the heart at that moment. Yeah, if you put it that way. Liu Mingfei quickly touched his chest and found that there was blood. But, it seems like everything is fine? The big hole that was imagined did not appear, and even the fur was not damaged at all. He understood again. Since I'm not in Hawaii's home country and I'm in charge of a different region, I should be in heaven right now, right? This would also explain why the dead are still standing. And he looks very well. Then, will she be there? Liu Mingfei couldn't help but stand up and glanced at the people around him. Unfortunately, that figure was not found. He walked slowly to Guderian and couldn't help scratching his hair with his right hand. An indescribable numbness still lingers in my head. Why do we still have feelings in our bodies now that we have gone to heaven? It's very unscientific. Oh Liu Mingfei. You're awake? Woke up? Yeah, I'm awake now. What's going on? Isn't there a process like the Nahi bridge in this place? In the silence, someone suddenly asked this question. Puff. Someone in the crowd suddenly couldn't hold it anymore and uttered this sound. In an instant, the silent atmosphere was like a deflated balloon. It deflated instantly. Ha ha ha, Nahi bridge, is this a cold joke from Huaxia country? Well, he couldn't have been anesthetized by Frigga's bullets. I don't think I've ever seen this guy before. He was probably captured and brainwashed by God in his dream. Buddha's bullet? What is that? Anesthesia is. His mind suddenly recalled the strange crimson bullet that pierced through the airflow. And after being hit, there was no pain at all, but an irresistible fatigue and numbness. Ahem, Liu Mingfei, you are not dead, and neither are we. This is just an event similar to a real-life CS. Bullets are like anesthetics, but these guys took it a bit too far. Guderian clenched his right hand into a fist and coughed twice. The corners of his covered mouth seemed to be slightly raised, as if he was signaling the people around him to be quiet. Or maybe he couldn't help it anymore. Liu Mingfei suddenly felt that if there was a hole right now, he could crawl into it and spend the rest of his life. At this time, the two boys who fell together were resurrected at the same time. The blood on the chest is like the delicate and strangely beautiful flowers on the other side of the long river. Sentencing them to death. Did you see it clearly? No, I only heard gunshots. A modified Walter PPK. 2 shots in a row, 2 of us. Caesar touched his chest with his middle and index fingers, and his fingertips were stained with a deep red. The ice blue eyes were filled with indifference. Watching quietly. But I always feel like something is burning. Ice melting into water is enough to suffocate people. Chu Zihang leaned against the wall, clasped his hands, and had an expressionless face. Murasame was held in 2 arms. Like a swordsman who is independent of the world. It seems like he never cares about anything. Chu Zihang, Caesar. It's just right that you two woke up. Look what you two have done. At this time, Professor Manstein had just reattached the dislocated arm of his last student and gave him an injection. Then he walked towards the 2 of them angrily, with his beard sticking up high. Just like an old goat encountering tough grass. Take an active part in the Freedom Day activities, Mr. Manstein. No rules were broken, no casualties were caused, it was free and peaceful, wasn't it? Caesar and Chu Zihang were surprisingly cooperative at this time, and the 2 sentences they said even seemed to contain a hint of provocation. You guys. Don't you know how much damage you have caused? Or did you do it on purpose? Manstein pointed at two teenagers who were much taller than him and obviously didn't care about what he said. He was so angry that he almost jumped up. I will definitely report this matter to the principal and give you 2 severe punishments. Caesar shrugged his shoulders and smiled easily and calmly, obviously not taking the threat seriously at all. It's all up to you. Chu Zihang didn't move at all, maintaining his previous posture, and even closed his eyes slightly. There was a slight wrinkle between his brows, and he seemed to be lost in some thought. The group of students around them almost split into 2 factions and followed their example. Some Indians even twisted their necks and started dancing. If there was a small hole on Professor Manstein's bald head at this moment, then magma would definitely be gushing out. Okay, very good. I'll report this to the principal right away. As he spoke, the old man, whose hands were shaking with anger, took out a cell phone from his pocket. But before I could move my fingers, the phone started ringing. Headmaster. When Manstanton heard the news, his face showed a hint of respect. The students around him instantly became quiet upon seeing this, their expressions solemn and serious. This is a tribute to heroes and pioneers. Silent and powerful. Good afternoon, Manstein. The gentle and steady voice seemed to come from medieval Europe. It's like a wine that has been buried under a pasture for 100 years and is now at its best. The pure and aged intoxicating aroma is overflowing and full of charm. At this moment, it seemed to have an inexplicable charm to the students around. Many people slowly approached and listened attentively. So Manstein simply turned on the speakerphone of his cell phone, and after modification it became as loud as a loudspeaker. Hello, Principal Ange, I have something to report to you about this free day. As he said this, his narrow eyes, with thin round framed gold-rimmed glasses, glanced at the students around him with a hint of arrogance. Especially Caesar and Chu Zihang. Oh wait, let me say hello to my 2S level freshmen first. Are Hie Hie and Lu Mingfei here? The hands-free sound radiated to the surroundings like radio waves. Everyone's eyes widened as if they had eaten something spicy. 2S levels. This has never happened in this school in all the years since it was founded. And this time they actually got to meet. It can be called a great honor. Perhaps their names will be given a little more emphasis in the school history in the future. Professor Guderian quickly nudged the 2 young men beside him. His face was full of pride as a guide. Motioned for them to come closer for this call. Hello, Principal. Hie Hie and Lu Mingfei said this at the same time. The 2 looked at each other with strange emotions, even a little bit. The smell of gunpowder. It seemed as if at this moment they had once again become the figures facing each other with guns drawn in the afterglow of the setting sun. In the end, Lu Mingfei was the first to look away. Only now did he feel a little scared, and confused? I was afraid of the murderous intent I had at that time. I really wanted to kill the person in front of me. It is precisely because of this that I am afraid of overestimating my own abilities. You know, he didn't get the beret himself. But it was thrown to him by Hie Hie. With 2 guns in his hands, he wiped out that group of super powerful people by himself, taking advantage of the time and place. Charity? No, it was more like he was expecting something and did this inexplicable thing. If not, could I really get out of that narrow path? The answer is obvious. There is no possibility at all. A hearty laugh came from the other side. Hello, my S-class freshman. I have a few things to do this time. Oh yeah, before that. Welcome to Castle College. P.S. The author is currently in internship and has no time to write novels. For the sake of quality, I will probably stop updating for 3 or 4 days and continue after returning to school. I hope everyone understands. I will be back. Chapter 66. Then let's get down to business. Angie's tone became a little more serious. It is undoubtedly unprecedented for the college to have 2S level freshmen at the same time. This is something worth writing into the school's history. It is an honor for everyone present. In the near future, you may be called the people of the Golden Age, just like the European players who returned home with honors from the 2006 Light Cup. The voice was neither loud nor soft, but one could clearly hear the principal's excitement. Everyone around couldn't help but raise their heads, as if they had already felt the pride. Lu Mingfei felt the gazes from all around him, as if his head was being pointed at by thousands of heavy machine guns with infrared rays, and he felt uncomfortable all over. To be honest, he had no sense of reality at all, whether it was S level or not. After all, he knew very well that he could not fight and did not have any special abilities. Only Interstellar and the Legend of Mir can be considered up to standard. I wonder if they count? Hie Hie didn't care about it at all and seemed a little dull. In fact, he was counting the flower buds on the plum tree behind the crowd. Yezi once said that her favorite flower was plum blossom. It is small and red, and it makes people feel full of vitality at first sight. So he bought a seed and quietly planted it next to the rose. I wonder if it has sprouted now? Oh, and there's that thing I left for Dad. I wonder if he found it. After all, I spent a lot of money, so I didn't dare say it to his face. But it is precisely because of this that what you are about to face will also be the dragon-slaying era. Fighting and killing, death and separation, this will be the main theme in the future. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's timid. But absolutely no one will back down. Because this is why they are standing here. So, Hie Hie, Lu Ming Fei. The surrounding blood was like a wave coming from all directions, enveloping the two young men whose thoughts were just drifting thousands of miles away. Only then did they come to their senses. I hope you can understand the burden you bear, or you can call it responsibility, and what your future as an S-class will be like. Don't rush to conclusions, there's still time. The tone of voice fell, like a 1,000-pound weight hitting the paper. It was so quiet that you could hear the wind blowing. Everyone was looking at the two young men in the center of the crowd, waiting, even expecting. I will not let go of any of those who deserve to be slaughtered, and those who deserve to live. No one can hurt him in the slightest in front of me. This is what Hie Hie said, as if it came naturally with the distant wind. When it fell, what rang in everyone's ears was the young man's arrogance and heroism. His hands were in the pockets of his windbreaker, and his eyes were spotless. That was his attitude. Different from everyone, different from everything in this academy. It is like a lone eagle flying against the flock of geese in South Africa on a cold winter day just to catch a glimpse of the snowy scenery in the north. What does should live mean? After Hie Hie finished speaking, this became the question on everyone's mind. It can't be a dragon, right? They deserve to die. Oh, I see. This is really the passion of a young man. The voice on the other end of the phone finished speaking this sentence in pauses. I don't know if it's because of the bad signal, but it seems a bit laggy. There was another inexplicable silence. Lu Ming Fei seemed a little uneasy. It was obvious that he was the next one to speak out. Kill those who deserve to be killed, and live those who deserve to be lived? Please, I don't have that strength. He glanced at Hie Hie who was daydreaming again. Besides, let's not talk about whether this person can do such cruel words. It's too arrogant to say that here. Well, I will try my best. In the end, Lu Ming Fei only said these two meaningless words. There is room for maneuver, but the essence is to follow the trend. It's never wrong to follow the majority. Okay, as long as you know what you want to do, you will always achieve something. I am looking forward to your next performance. Oh, by the way, don't forget to pick up my introduction to dragon family trees. Then the principal hung up the phone. The surroundings suddenly became noisy. 3 or 5 people started a heated discussion, and from time to time they looked at the two teenagers who were still standing there. Some people had smiles on their faces, curiosity and anticipation. Some are full of coldness and arrogance. But most of them are the latter. After all, most people were standing around Caesar and Chu Zihang. The blood stains on both of their chests were still glowing bright red. Ha ha ha, you two really have high hopes. It's been a long time since I heard such praise from the principal. Professor Guderian suddenly hugged both of their shoulders from behind. His face was full of pride and joy. There was a gleam in his energetic eyes, as if he had already envisioned a long-awaited future. With you here, I will definitely have a tenured professor position. He stated his purpose without any reservation. Oh, congratulations, would you like to treat me to a meal? Lu Ming Fei was like a walking corpse at this moment, and seemed to not care about anything. The gazes from the people around him also made him feel a little unsure about what to do. As for the old man behind him who brought him here, he really couldn't tell what emotion he was feeling. Anyway, it definitely won't be like the situation where Boya met Ziki. Please. You must. After you two pass the 3 exam, I will treat you to a good meal. When Lu Ming Fei heard this, he was so shocked that his back suddenly straightened, and his face was distorted as if he had drunk overnight milk and then eaten a banana soaked in water. 3 exam? What is that? Professor Guderian didn't seem to care much about this, or perhaps it should be said that he was proud of it. The more he thought about it, the more he couldn't help but pat Liu Mingfei's left shoulder hard, actually lowering it by an arc. Don't worry. It may be difficult for others, but for you, just think of it as an experience. Why? Because it's so easy. Liu Mingfei looked at Guderian with disbelief, as if he was looking at a pyramid scheme leader. Don't believe it? Well, it seems that you still don't know how powerful you are. Then I will give you an example. Just treat it as a game. Pay attention to the language I am going to use next. That is dragon language. Professor Guderian loosened his hand and walked in front of them. His eyes closed slightly and he began to recite something. That is a language that does not exist in any country. He rolled his tongue, as if he was singing, but also as if he was mourning. Just like the bells of a distant church, the ancient bells of an unknown temple are ringing. As long as eternity. It was as if the emperor was sitting high on the throne, beyond the infinite history. A finger fell. All the ministers bowed their heads and prostrated themselves on the ground. Above the hall, there is brilliant golden light. Liu Mingfei listened quietly, tilting his head slightly, his face full of sadness. Dirty laughter, I don't understand at all. It's over. A college student was ordered to drop out of school just a few days after attending class. This was the headline on Xinlang a few days later. But Hie Hie on the side was completely different. It seems that, anger. I don't know when he closed his eyes. Under the windbreaker, starting from the heart. Countless golden lights continuously flow along the blood vessels within it. One side of his tightly closed eye was wrinkled into a line. It seemed as if something was about to burst out from the pupils. When he finally opened his eyes, still filled with pure golden light. Every inch of the pupil is filled with golden lines that are constantly spreading and shining. There are also traces of bright red mixed in. His expression was extremely angry. And his eyes just turned to the source of that language. Professor Guderian's body suddenly trembled. He seemed to be in incomparable shock. The eyes beneath the grey eyebrows looked extremely heavy at this moment. Want to open my eyes? But it is completely difficult to uncover it. Just now, a piece of dragon text that he had never heard of clearly flashed through his mind. Extremely arrogant and powerful. He appeared suddenly like that, and stood before the absolutely powerful Emperor of Words. Seems to be provocative, seems to be laughing wildly. Chapter 67. Boom. Suddenly, Professor Guderian fell down. Without any injury or pain, he just fell to the ground. It was as if something wanted him to do so. This is a command at this moment. Hie Hie's eyes were black and white. It was like a scene from old TV. It even has electromagnetic patterns. What's wrong with me? He found Guderian lying down. What's wrong with him? Not far away, a bald old man wearing thin-framed gold-rimmed glasses was running towards this side. But it was too slow, as if it was in slow motion. What did I do? He couldn't help but raise his hands. Surprisingly, I discovered that in the suffocating black and white, there were clearly strands of golden lines trembling. At this moment, my mind was suddenly struck by lightning. All thoughts were disconnected. Boom. Then Hie Hie also fell down. What's going on? Hasn't the effect of Frigga's bullet worn off? This was the urgent and doubtful voice of an old man. I don't know either. Professor Guderian just recited some dragon script, and then they both fell down. This is a young boy's voice, probably Liu Mingfei. Long Wen. Could it be? In a trance, all I saw before my eyes was a chaos of black and white. But I could vaguely hear a lot of noisy sounds. It's so noisy, be quiet for a while. Hie Hie seemed to be talking in his sleep. It's said in a bland and tasteless way. He was floating in these two monotonous colors, seeming to be extremely tired. Don't even bother to explore the reasons. You, what exactly are you? You've started it again. You, what exactly are you? Are you annoying? You, what exactly are you? I told you I am. I am. Who was it? Crack, just as the words fell, there was a sound of cracking. The black and white all around began to crack. It was like a spider web, shattering in layers all around. Until far away, a beam of light penetrated the countless darkness and shone on him. Haha. Hie Hie sat up suddenly. There still seemed to be electricity flashing in my mind. A dazzling light suddenly hit my eyes. He quickly blocked it with his hands. After adapting for a while, I slowly opened my eyes. It was a window with a balcony. Even 2 or 3 people can sit on it. Outside the window, it is as clear as glass and as brilliant as orange. The azure sky exudes an almost intoxicating sense of freedom. Hie Hie looked around again. Desk, wardrobe, and a made bed. Light-colored paint, with luggage placed on the side. It seems that I have already entered the dormitory. He felt as if he were dreaming. But now I can't remember it clearly. Ah, you're awake. At this moment, someone suddenly opened the door. He was obviously surprised to see Hie Hie awake. A handsome young man with a high nose bridge, aqua blue eyes, and skin as white as the silver moon came in. Looks like a Russian. He was holding a cup of soy milk and 2 buns in his hands. Considering the breakfast habits of people in that country, the food is quite light. Isn't it usually the case that strong liquor vodka is mixed with beef and mutton? He looked a little reserved. Gently placed the breakfast on the table. Then just stood there like that for about 2 or 3 minutes. It seems like he is having some ideological struggle. Talking to himself softly. And it seems to be in Russian. Hie Hie naturally couldn't do that, but one could tell from the tone of his tongue. It took him a while to make up his mind. Then he took out a bun from the pocket and placed it on the cup of soy milk. Slowly walked to Hie Hie's side. So he handed him the bag. Here, there's another one inside. But he spoke Hyuxia. Hie Hie looked at the young man in front of him whose eyes were like streams of water in a stream or lake, and whose face showed a look of reluctance to give up his love. Obviously, he had never met this person. So I wanted to refuse. But my stomach is not cooperating. The melodious sound circled 3 times in this space. Puff. The young man couldn't help but tilt his head when he heard it. Fortunately, he covered his mouth in time with his other hand. Otherwise I would have laughed out loud. Ah, thank you. Hie Hie, a man of great integrity, finally took the bag. Then take out the still warm bun. With 1 bite, the fresh and tender gravy overflows in your mouth. Yes, it's filled with pork. It tastes a bit like the one sold by the old man next to the school. Excuse me, who are you? He finished the bun in 2 or 3 bites. However, the boy had just sat back on the stool. This sudden sound made him tremble and stand up. I'm FM. Your roommate. It was urgent and solemn, as if answering an order. You? This made Hie Hie very confused. Hello Yefim, my name is Hie Hie. May I ask how long I have been unconscious? Why am I here? And how is Professor Guderian? Yefim seemed like a new recruit who had received an order, his body trembling as he answered Hie Hie's questions. You were unconscious for only 1 day. Professor Manstein said you were fine, just too tired, so he asked the students to carry you here to sleep. Professor Guderian was the same as you. He woke up early this morning and came to see you. Hie Hie got out of bed and folded the quilt slowly. The quilt, which had few wrinkles to begin with, soon became angular. When I stood up and looked at Yefim, I found that he was still standing in a military posture. Well, how about we sit down and talk? Hie Hie pointed to the stool in front of him with a self-proclaimed kind smile on his face. Because he inexplicably felt that in the eyes of this young man, he was like a big devil. Yes. The boy responded and sat on the stool. He sat upright and meticulously, as if he was practicing his sitting posture. Then there was silence. The only sound I could hear outside the window was the chirping of pigeons and the flapping of their wings. The buns and soy milk will get cold if you don't eat them now. When the young man heard this, his whole body froze, and a layer of mist inexplicably appeared in his aqua blue eyes. Hie Hie was still confused. He had already walked in front of him, holding the cup of soy milk with the bun on top in both hands. He leaned forward suddenly, his head hanging, and his voice seemed to tremble. I'm sorry. Here you go. I was ignorant. I spent my last penny on this. It's all yours. Hie Hie was so frightened that he leaned back tactically, then stood up directly. What on earth is going on? Look how scared the child is. Wait, what the hell is going on? Do I look like Lucifer? He quickly pushed the soy milk and buns back to the boy. Almost. Ah. Oh no. You are an angel, how can you be Lucifer? Hie Hie's face was full of question marks. After waking up from a nap, I suddenly turned into the devil Lucifer. What should I do? Waiting online, it's urgent. He wanted to recall, but his memory seemed to stop at the moment when Guderian finished reading the dragon text. If there is anything that could cause such a change, this is the only thing, right? Can you tell me what happened after I fainted? Hie Hie supported the boy's shoulders and put him back on the stool. Then he put the bun into his mouth. Then he asked slowly. Yefim only dared to look at the person in front of him with his peripheral vision. He took out his cell phone from his pocket, tapped a few times, and handed it to Hie Hie. Then he quickly started eating the buns. It seemed as if he was afraid that the big devil in front of him would suddenly change his mind. I took the phone and the screen showed what seemed to be a forum. Night Watcher forum. Hie Hie flipped through it and took a look. My mouth opened unconsciously. Regarding the content above, I am really speechless. Of the top 10 headlines, 8 are about him and 2 are about Liu Mingfei. What the hell is the title and content? Top 1, The Devil Who Fell from the Sky, Hie Hie. Top 2, with 4 shots at the start, Caesar, Chu Zihang, Su Jian, and Chen Motong were all killed. Who is the super rookie king Hie Hie? Top 3, under the word Spirit Emperor, 2 S-level newcomers, 1 did not react, and the other fainted after Professor Guderian. What is the reason for this? Will the school have an explanation and investigation? Top 4, get to know the S-level freshman from scratch, the winner of Free Day, Hie Hie. You won't know until you see it, and you'll be shocked. The Hie Hie described in the book is indeed not like a human being. It's like a god. 2 shots from the sky annihilate everything, and devilish body skills dodge thousands of bullets. Hie Hie's veins popped out when he saw this. He finally understood what the situation was now. I also know how I got the title of Demon King. There is also an administrator below who is kindly guiding the wind direction. There was even a special vote, is he the devil incarnate or the messenger of justice? 2 options. It was an overwhelming victory for the former. Chapter 68. Veins in Hie Hie's temples were bulging. Don't let him find this administrator. Otherwise, I will let him see what a real devil is. Hey, Yefim, these things on the internet are not credible. You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm not a demon, and I won't eat people. The Russian boy finally looked Hie Hie in the eye. Good man, his eyes are wide open with anger. He was so scared that his whole body trembled. Then he held the soy milk in both hands and slowly turned his head to the other side. Okay. A magnetic field, or barrier, suddenly emanated from the whole body. It was densely written with "Keep away from Hie Hie and the devil." It seems that I really can't ask any more. If you ask again, I'll run away. Hie Hie had no choice but to sit back on his bed. I took out the N96 phone and wanted to know more details. But just after opening it, the date on the screen appeared before my eyes, 11:43 am, Sunday, October 7, 2009. Yefim. Hie Hie suddenly called out the boy's name a little loudly, as if he had discovered something important. This sound made him stand up suddenly again. There was still a light green straw in his mouth. Yes. The boy's face showed anxiety and he seemed about to cry. What good can come of being called that by the devil all of a sudden? Maybe it's time for death? Sorry I was a little loud just now. I wanted to ask, is the 3 exam today? The boy answered truthfully. Yes, it's today. The exam starts at 12:30. I'm planning to go. At this point he seemed to have thought of something, and quickly continued, oh, by the way, Professor Guderian said earlier that if you haven't woken up before the 3 exam, or if you're still feeling unwell, you don't have to take it. We'll arrange a make-up exam for you. But he stood up and put on the army green shoulder bag. No need, I feel fine. Can I go with you? I'm new here and I'm not sure where to go for the exam. He was seen scratching the back of his head, his smile revealing his embarrassment and helplessness. Seeing this, Yefim hesitated for a moment. But in the end I agreed. There was an inexplicable hint of doubt and curiosity in those aqua blue eyes. As long as you are happy. Seeing this, Hie Hie followed Yefim. Hey, can I have my phone? Do I need to just leave it here? Hie Hie then realized that he was still holding the phone in his hand, and he didn't know what to do for a moment. It's better not to. It's up to you. So Hie Hie put the phone back next to the pillow. Just call me Hie Hie. No need to use honorifics. We should be about the same age. With a bang, Hie Hie, who was walking behind, closed the door. Yefim walked in front, looking very embarrassed. It was like facing an officer who had the final say over his life and death. No, 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 I still want it. You are S level, I am only B level, and you are a demon. Oh no, angel. And I am mortal. And. He was gesticulating as he spoke, especially when he was changing his words. Okay, okay, let's go quickly. Hie Hie was afraid that he would get himself into trouble as he spoke. In the dormitory, Hie Hie left for only a short while. The phone screen lights up on the second floor of the library, the third classroom on the left. The two arrived at their destination 5 minutes before the exam started. There is no rule here that requires you to arrive at the examination room 15 minutes early to prepare. As soon as he reached the door, Yefim suddenly and quickly walked in before Hie Hie. He wanted to create the appearance that we are not in this together. Because along the way, the hot or cold gazes of everyone were about to roast him and then freeze him. It can be described as a world of ice and fire. This is a test for me, who always has a very low sense of existence. The reason for all this is undoubtedly the man behind him, the devil from heaven, Hie Hie. Why would I be living in the same dormitory with him? I obviously just wanted to spend 4 years of college life honestly and peacefully, and then take up a position in the research department. This is enough to ensure that my mother and my younger brothers and sisters have enough food and clothing. But, he really doesn't look like what is described in the forum. It looks like actually. Like a very gentle person. Hie Hie didn't know what to do when he saw this. After all, he also felt the boy's confusion. After the exam, go see Professor Guderian. Ask him why he fainted yesterday evening and why you fainted. Then see if you can switch to a single dormitory. As soon as I walked into the classroom, I saw the girl with dark red hair. She wore a pair of skinny jeans that accentuated her long legs, and a pair of purple and gold Mary Janes. Sitting on the podium, wandering around in disorder. She saw him too. They were just speechless. Hie Hie sat quietly in a more secluded location. Because the classroom is quite spacious, there seemed to be very few students. Although when he walked up the ladder to the back, almost everyone's eyes followed him. And it was accompanied by very low discussion. It seemed as if he was afraid of being heard by the big devil. After a while, Lu Mingfei also arrived, almost on time. Manstein glanced at everyone present and repeated the examination rules. Then Nono distributed A4 paper and sharpened pencils. Then they left the examination room together and closed the door. The windows were also closed, and the curtain wall was lowered from the mezzanine of the carved wooden windows. The bright chandelier in the middle also turned on. At first, everyone looked at everything around them in confusion, but after a while they started chatting and discussing. They were obviously extremely confused. Is this an exam without any questions? At this moment, the radios on all 4 corners of the wall suddenly rang. Suddenly, a powerful and fashionable rock song was played. Beat It by the King of Pop Michael Jackson. It instantly rang in everyone's ears. Everyone was at a loss. But some people also hummed along with the melody. But it didn't take long. Intermittent sobbing sounds began to be heard. Someone walked directly into the aisle and started a solo ballroom dance. There was someone sitting on the windowsill of the curtain wall, holding a piece of paper and a pen in his hands. Although tears were flowing from the corners of his eyes, he was smiling. Stop and think from time to time. It's like writing a love poem to a lover in another country. Some people just sit there calmly, writing furiously. Even though tears were flowing, they were all laughing so happily. It was like seeing something you had been waiting for your whole life. An ordinary person present might have thought they were in the middle of a mental hospital. The pencil in Hie Hie's hand had already been broken. The A4 paper on the table was densely covered with drawings. Various patterns are crisscrossed. It's like a huge tree branch covered with spider silk. Hidden in the ruins is withering. Hie Hie looked at the huge golden dragon pupil in front of him. I was still sitting at my desk. Everything around has long been annihilated and turned into dust. Melt into this endless darkness. I am Hie Hie of Hebai and Yi of Yushi. You don't need to ask me any more. Hie Hie seemed to be accustomed to this situation. He had his hands on the table, his head leaning to the side, as if he was sleeping. Why did you forget? Finally, there are some different words. What do you mean by forget? I never forget. This voice always asks questions that are inexplicable. So what are you? This is what Hie Hie asked. Only then did he suddenly realize that he had this dream. It seems that he knows nothing at all. But why have you never asked before? It seems that's a ridiculous question. It's like you, as the only human being, are asking who these limbs, this head, and this IQ belong to. You have long forgotten it. After an unknown amount of silence, these words that sounded like a soliloquy slowly came out. It was like the ripples created by a stone thrown into a well. It is so tiny and weak that it cannot even move a speck of dust. There was such sadness in the tone of voice. Pain and disappointment, mixed with a suffocating feeling. Used to it. This has been going on from countless years ago to the present day. Things that can only be learned slowly. This has been the only statement for so long. Although it's still illogical. Chapter 69. Already forgotten? How early? Before or after the age of 12? Hie Hie's eyes closed. It's not that I feel sleepy, I just feel too bored. There are always some things that are hidden in the corners of your mind and cannot be retrieved. A lot of memories keep running through my mind. It will drive people crazy. If you want to live your life hard on your own, you can't hold too many things in your mind. If there are too many good ones, people will just drown in them. If there are too many bad things, they will only nail people to the starting point. This is something I learned from experience. So remember and forget, really. Is it important? Hie Hie said this softly, as if speaking to the world. It seems like it is talking to myself. The response was silence. If everything is all right, you can wake up soon. I seem to be still taking an exam. Can't sleep. Even if you close your eyes, the light from the huge golden dragon pupil can still shine through. When I was a kid, it would have been nice if I could have this kind of light when I slept that didn't cost any electricity. Tired? I have no idea. A confusing question with an ambiguous answer. Why do you always make yourself so tired? I have no idea. Hie Hie suddenly felt a little irritated and his chest felt stuffy. It turns out that I can have this feeling in dreams as well. Can you please let me wake up? His head was buried between his arms. His forehead was touching hers, so I couldn't tell what his expression was at the moment. Do you really know what you are doing, certainly to save those who are dying but do not deserve to die? In order to avoid regrets that could have been avoided. Is it really worth it? Is it worth it? Hie Hie never seemed to think about this question. He just wanted to save the helpless and kind girl who was similar to him but different. Save those tragedies that didn't have to happen. Does it hurt? It hurts like hell. The pain of a heart attack feels like being cut. When fighting against that special Deadpool, his entire body felt like it was about to be shattered. My right hand has lost all feeling. Only one cuff was stuck to the flesh. When using the word spirit, it felt like all the blood in the body was being drained, and a feeling of fainting and pain that spread like lightning raged throughout the body. Every time I tremble with pain. Hie raised his head, frowned slightly, and showed a faint smile. Compared to the feeling before, it doesn't seem to hurt that much. Satisfied and natural, even with a little bit of relief. You're always like this. Don't act like you know me very well. He pushed the table away and stood up. Both hands in pockets. The eyes that were always clear and pure stared directly at the golden dragon pupil in front of him. I should wake up. No changes were seen. Even the darkness in the abyss did not dissipate at all. Why wake up? Why not stay? There are just some boring and cowardly guys out there. Hie raised his head slightly and looked at the small haze in the distance that seemed to have been dispersed. He just discovered it. It turns out that there are meteors passing through this world. Stay and watch the shooting stars. I have things I have to do. Another one passed by. It is scarlet. Like the sun with its skirts trailing behind it. It's not impossible. I don't even know how long I've been watching it. Hie Hie smiled. Then you have plenty of free time. It was like a greeting between two old acquaintances. Yeah, too idle. When saying this, the voice seemed inexplicably lonely. The look in the dragon's eyes as it looked at Hie Hie. It seemed like things were finally changing. It seems like there are all kinds of emotions. But it was eventually worn out by endless years. Then there was another inexplicable silence. Do you really hate fate that much? Even though the sound came from all directions, it still seemed so desolate and dull at this moment. It's like asking. Do you really like sweet tofu pudding that much? Isn't it the same with you? Who said this? It seems there is no one else. But Hie Hie's sight was clearly still following the falling red meteor. Watched for a long time. It was like there was no end. When the voice heard these words, the golden light suddenly brightened. Ha ha ha, yeah, I would have forgotten if you hadn't told me. But it sounds like a drunk Oscar Wilde saying something like this. Hie Hie came back to his senses at this time. Because the scarlet meteor seemed to be flying farther and farther away. At this moment, only a red dot can be seen flashing occasionally. I don't know you. You talk a lot today. I thought you were a repeater. As he spoke, he sat down on the ground again. I always feel that this will not be a short conversation. I'm in a good mood today, isn't that okay? Besides, it was not easy for you to hear me in your occasional consciousness space before. Today is a special situation. When he said this, there was a hint of coldness in his voice. Even the wind started to blow around Hie Hie, blowing a few strands of hair at the temples. Oh! Hie Hie didn't seem to care. He even touched the small area where he was sitting. As smooth and transparent as a mirror. Just. Oh! The voice was clearly unhappy with this reaction. What else? I don't even know what you are, whether you are real or imaginary. I don't even know if I am in a dream or a fantasy. This reaction is normal. The voice hesitated for a moment, and the tone was inexplicably low. Whatever you think. The tone fell, and then seemed to become solemn again. There is also some fun in it. But I must remind you that some of the things you care about in this world have begun to change dramatically. Or should I put it more simply, the so-called dragon-slaying era. The curtain has already opened. Hie Hie's sight was instantly filled with heat and coldness. He stared directly at the golden dragon eye in front of him, which was more than n times larger than his. But its momentum seemed to have already pierced the entire space. That is to say, there was no change in tone, but full of murderous intent. That's right. A dragon is about to awaken. All thrones are about to welcome their true masters, and then, die completely. When the voice said this, the tone seemed relaxed and natural. It's like talking about the crying and fighting among children in a family. Why today? Hie Hie stood up, his obsidian-like hair color now making him look even more resilient and proud. The voice paused for a moment, then said teasingly in a playful tone, "Didn't you just not believe it?" The young man stood straight, his eyebrows and eyes did not change at all. He just continued to ask calmly, and his tone even carried a kind of supreme authority. At this moment, the golden dragon pupil seemed to have seen something terrifying, and its pupil suddenly shrank. This boy who is always calm and composed. The pupils are burning. It was a bright red gold color, like lava. It was as hot as the sun with flares. Why today? Please tell me. The voice's tone of voice trembled as it answered, as if it was recalling something that happened countless years ago. Someone, a sword. Yes, time has almost worn away those memories. But now it becomes clear again. Because, there's a guy on the throne who's about to be woken up. Who? The Lord of Bronze and Fire. Where? Huaxia, Three Gorges Reservoir, upper reaches of the Yangtze River, on the tugboat Monia of Castle Academy. Time. Tomorrow afternoon. After hearing the news, Hie Hie closed his eyes and fell into deep thought. When I opened my eyes again, they had returned to their original state. He even showed a harmless smile. You can see through things that haven't happened yet. That's amazing. The voice seemed to have just come to its senses. The tone of voice was filled with sadness. I didn't expect that. I was kind enough to open a small back door for you, but you actually threatened me. It's really miserable. This made Hie Hie a little confused, because his tone just now was very natural and light. Even added please. Who told you to keep it a secret? Besides, didn't I ask you to tell me? If you don't want to tell me, there's nothing you can do about it. The sound seemed to have been ruined. Speak loudly and majestically. I don't care. After this, I don't know how many years it will take for us to have this conversation again. I don't care about you. It started again, these incomprehensible words. So, can't you help me again? Hie Hie's words were somewhat puzzling. I don't even know if this is an illusion, but this is the first time I'm talking to this person. Why should I get help? You should know what I want to do. He wanted to make himself look more reasonable. But in the end, I seem to be at a loss for words. At this moment, the voice suddenly read out a passage of obscure language. Crack! The sound of breaking and explosion began one after another. Spiderweb-like cracks appeared in the surrounding space. The ground beneath Hie Hie's feet also began to collapse. Hie Hie lost his balance and fell into the endless darkness below. The chaos of black and white continued to unfold before my eyes. In a trance, he seemed to hear the voice again, intermittently. True space jump. This is the power corresponding to the words I just mentioned. The effect is as the name suggests, but remember, you can only use it 3 times. I am very happy with this conversation. But it always feels so fast. Haha, I seem to be like this all the time. I will not be sad to leave. I look forward to our next encounter. Remember, be nice to yourself. Chapter 70. Morning. Hie Hie woke up suddenly, and he found himself lying on the table in the same position as in his dream. But at this time, I was indeed in the classroom. The curtain wall in the window mezzanine has been retracted. There was no one in the classroom. At the side, there was a girl with dark red hair holding a bunch of A4 papers in her hand, and in her right hand she was holding the one with Hie Hie. She didn't look at it, she just casually inserted it. Is this a trait of S class, sleeping during the 3 exam? Nyanyo's expression showed some amusement and curiosity. You are even more different. Your pen is broken. Hie Hie looked at the A4 paper in his hand and the 2 completely broken pens, feeling a little overwhelmed. Because in his memory, it seems like I didn't answer anything. I don't even know when I fell asleep. But, there are more important things now. Well, if there is a makeup exam, please notify me, thank you. As he spoke, Hie Hie walked away on his own. But there seemed to be a slight frown between his brows. Makeup exam. Nyanyo stood in place and accurately pulled out a piece of A4 paper from the bunch of A4 papers. Isn't this a complete answer? It just looks a bit like a picture drawn by an elementary school student. After reading it, he stuffed it back into the gap where it originally was. Seems a bit nonchalant. Hie Hie walked slowly on the crimson gravel road. The sun is shining brightly at this time. Through the roses leaning against the ancient high-rise building, you can just see a few floating clouds passing by. The blue sky is reflected in the water. Even William Turner would probably find it difficult to express even a hint of this idea. Unfortunately, the audience is not interested in this. Hie Hie had a crazy idea in his mind at this time. It's almost like a gamble. The chips are true space jump. He had no doubt about the authenticity of this power. The restlessness in the blood at this moment is the best proof. Therefore he needs a reason not to appear in public for at least 1 day. The beginning of the revival of the Lord of Bronze and Fire. He had to understand the details. Perhaps this will be the closest he will ever be to a real dragon. But it must be done without being discovered by others. After all, such a power. Space jump, it's obviously not an ordinary ability. Although I don't know what that voice is, that dragon pupil is. But this did not prevent him from being curious and grateful about it at the moment. Hello, Instructor Guderian. Hie Hie knocked on the study door. The door was open, but Guderian was lying with his back to it, slightly reclining on the hand-carved chair. Holding the same teacup in his hand, he looked out the window. The table was filled with various materials and ancient books. It almost blocked his already huge body. Hearing a knock on the door, he slowly turned his head. Didn't I tell you, don't bother me, don't bother me. There was some anger and depression in his tone. It's like encountering something puzzling, but there's no way to get the answer, making the whole person seem like a volcano that can erupt at any time. But when he saw who was coming, he suddenly stood up. It was like hearing the orders from my former superiors. Although now they are no longer known where in Europe they are buried. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were busy. The door is open. This seems very abrupt. Because I just woke up and went to take the exam, I really didn't know about this. Oh Hie Hie. You're awake. I know you went to take the exam, how do you feel? Have no idea. After all, I don't even know what I have written. This is the truth. I don't know, but I feel so tired. It seems like he hasn't recovered from fainting yesterday. This is a lie. By the way, are you okay? This naturally refers to the incident of fainting. When Professor Guderian heard this, he paused imperceptibly as he walked towards Hie Hie. But he still smiled brightly. Oh. He's fine now. Maybe he got attacked by the word spirit or something. It's normal. He spoke righteously. Hie Hie believed it too. After all, as a freshman for only 2 days, he knew nothing about words and spirits. But you, are you still feeling tired now? What did you feel when you heard that language? For example, do you feel honored or sad to be summoned by the great master? Are there any strange words in front of your eyes? Or is it a spiritual vision or something? It's like a mental shock. Professor Guderian kept gesturing with his hands, and asked questions one after another like a rapid-fire cannon. His eyes were full of desire and expectation, and a few drops of white foam would occasionally spurt out of his mouth. Seems extremely anxious. Well. Seeing this, Hie Hie couldn't help but step back tactically, but still carefully recalled the situation at that time. But in the end, it could only last until the moment when Professor Guderian fell. No. This is the truth. After all, there seems to be nothing in my memory that he said. Everything was normal except the fainting. If I have to say it, it feels like listening to the words of a person who has just recovered from being mute and learning to speak. Really? Really? Nothing? Not a single situation has occurred. The old man in front of him became more and more excited, and finally he even put his hands on Hie Hie's shoulders. There seemed to be doubt in his eyes. It's more like the fear brought by the unknown. It was like encountering a black thing with tentacles and many eyes in the midst of chaos. I want to understand, but every time the thought comes to my mind, I collapse. Real? Hie Hie had no choice but to answer him affirmatively again. No. It shouldn't be like this. Professor Guderian scratched his hair. Then he walked back to the desk, picked up a gold-engraved book and quickly flipped through it. The hair that was always neatly combed was now messy. Then both of them suddenly became quiet. It took Professor Guderian a while to come back to his senses. He touched the back of his head and said with a smile, "If you still feel tired, go back and rest. I'll talk to Manstein, the guy who's in charge of your exam. He's in charge of discipline and attendance." But to Hie Hie, his smile seemed so forced, as if he was extremely tired. "Are you sure you're okay? You're our future star." When he said this, the old man's eyes with dark circles still flickered. Obviously, he was really looking forward to Hie Hie. "I just feel tired. I should be fine after 2 days of rest." "Thank you, Mentor Guderian." Hie Hie smiled. For the old man who brought him all the way to this castle college, he always remained respectful and kind. It's okay. I'll ask for 2 days off for you. Go and have a rest. Just remember not to miss any time." Professor Guderian looked at his student and waved with the back of his hand, his smile now seeming to have returned to its normal cheerful and confident self. So Hie Hie didn't say much, turned around and walked out of the study. Just as he was about to close the door, Professor Guderian suddenly said hurriedly, "Oh, and don't forget to take my class." Hie Hie naturally heard it and nodded slightly in response. Bang, the door closed gently. Hie Hie left about 10 minutes later. The door opened again. There was a conversation going on inside. "Has he been here?" "He? What he? Who do you mean?" "You know who I'm talking about. Don't forget that you have never been good at lying since you were a child." "All right. So, is it him or Lu Mingfei?" "Former." "Are you sure?" "Although it's much weaker than it was then, but when I just stood in front of him, I still can't help but tremble." "Promise me one thing, Manstein." "I have no obligation to promise you. Just treat it as a request from an old friend. Don't tell anyone else, okay?" "The two of them. They are all very good children." "You are too sentimental, Guderian. This may be the reason why you can't be a tenured professor." "Ha ha ha, maybe." Hie Hie returned to the dormitory an hour later. He went to prepare some things that might be useful. Then he changed into his own windbreaker and outfit. When he picked up the white N96 phone, only then did I discover a piece of information that I had missed. Hie Hie clicked it and took a look. The corners of his mouth quietly raised into a clearly visible arc. There was something rare in the young man's eyes at this moment. Tenderness is everywhere. There is a sentence and a funny expression on it. Hie Hie's total score in the science midterm exam, 499, breaking through the first tier line. / "Hey, your sister, I'm awesome, right?" Hie Hie was holding her cell phone, leaning against the balcony fence, with the army green shoulder bag hanging on her shoulder. "Don't be proud, keep working hard," he smiled as he sent his reply. Then he slowly walked towards the dormitory. Walk through the last afterglow of the sunset and blend into the darkness. October 7, 2009, 1943 Sunday True space jump. The last dust of the day swept away. A ray of sunset takes away the lingering charm of the western hills, leaving the tail end of someone's tone. In a flash, there was no one around. Chapter 71. Near evening Huaxia, upper reaches of the Yangtze River, Three Gorges Reservoir, on the tugboat Monia of Castle Academy. The strong wind makes the water surface sparkle. At this time of year when it is almost dark, everything in front of me seems a little chaotic. Hie Hie seemed to be in a semi-enclosed space on the Monia at this moment. You can still clearly hear the high-pitched sound of the metal whistle. Even if he was in the student dormitory of Castle College just a second ago. After I read out that ability, I thought about where I wanted to go. I just felt my head sinking. When I opened my eyes again, I was already here. It is indeed an extremely powerful and convenient force. However, the landing point chosen for this space jump has put people in a dilemma. At this moment, Hie Hie could only lean against the door and wait quietly. Because there were sounds of walking and talking outside. The main purpose and topic is naturally everything under this ship. It was only now that Hie Hie knew it for the first time. The name of this operation is Kuman Plan. It looks like an ox, with a blue body and no horns, and one foot. When it enters or leaves the water, there will be wind and rain. Its light is like the sun and the moon, and its sound is like thunder. Its name is Kuei. It is quite consistent with the scene at this time when there is a storm and the throne is about to wake up. The main people who carried out the dive were Yesheng and Shuto Kawaki. Two people I met at the Regent Hotel. By the way, I also invited Hie Hie to join in sea surfing. Hie Hie observed the layout of the space. I discovered that this is where the diving equipment is stored. It is mainly divided into two rows. On the left hangs a one-piece diving suit made of nanomaterials, arranged neatly in a special transparent box. On the right are various equipment, helmets, diving boots, oxygen tanks, buoyancy compensators, and breathing regulators. The colors and sizes correspond to the ones on the left. Hie Hie couldn't help but nodded, with a look of admiration on his face. He admitted that he was a little louder when he complained about the landing point. It's really beautifully done. Although I have never practiced it, I still know some basic operations about diving. Now that you're here. Of course, you have to go and witness it with your own eyes. Otherwise it would be meaningless. At this moment, the noise outside suddenly became noisy. The footsteps coming and going on the deck sounded like thin bamboo tubes frying in a frying pan. Appears hot and confused. Plus the strong wind and heavy rain at the moment. It's like the last stage play on the arc of the end of the world. This is a great opportunity for Hie Hie. He quickly picked out a set of grey ink equipment, which was exactly the right size for his body. Wearing it feels like it fits your skin. Hie Hie's most pertinent comment is, it must be very expensive. Remember to return it after use. As he was tying his diving boots, he suddenly heard two footsteps approaching from outside the door. Hey Paul, what's going on? I was just securing the anchor. It is said that a major discovery has been made. The two executive officers who are carrying out a mission 50 meters underwater need to replenish oxygen. Professor Rundstedt will personally dive down with the key later. Wow, this is something worth celebrating. Yeah, but not now. Let's celebrate after we get back, night. You can get drunk even if you can't drink. I could knock out some Siberian bears. Okay, go do your thing. I have to hurry and get the oxygen tank. Oxygen tank. Hie Hie looked at the neatly arranged items in front of him, but all lacking the same equipment, and felt something was wrong. So you just surrender like that? Firstly, this is not Hie Hie's style, and secondly, how should he explain it? An rookie king who should have been enjoying glory at Castle Academy suddenly appeared in the Three Gorges Reservoir in Huaxia, which was more than 1,000 miles away. It's unscientific no matter how you think about it. Want to bet that they don't know they're that S rank. But even if I am just an ordinary person, it seems that I shouldn't appear in this space. The footsteps are getting closer. Then just use space jump again? It's too wasteful. Then we can only... Click. The door handle opened in response. A tall European with sandy hair came in. Wearing a black raincoat. A gust of wind was also swept in along with it. This wind is really strong. He lifted his hood and scratched his wet hair. Where's the light? It was completely dark by now, with only the ship's lights outside faintly shining through the fixed windows. After groping for a while, he finally found a button on the other side of the door, but no light came on after pressing it many times. Paul! Come on! Are you a snail that's been pressed into the mud? A voice came from not far outside the door, urging urgently. Damn it, come now! So the man simply gave up on the button. He squinted his eyes and looked for the oxygen tank. Fortunately, it was found quickly. He quickly took it and ran out, without even having time to close the door. If you look carefully through the moonlight and the ship lights, you will see that it is a storage room that is neither too big nor too small. Everything returned to normal. Except for that door, it was suddenly closed when no one was around. Even if the wind and rain are blowing towards you. Haha! If you listen carefully in the storage room, you can hear faint breathing sounds. If you follow the sound, it can be seen that Hie Hie. At this moment, I am lying on the ceiling. To be precise, it's more like being pressed on it. The moment he slowly pushed the door shut with his right hand, he stood back on the ground. Fortunately, it works. There was a smile on Hie Hie's face. At that moment, he quickly used the power of words to apply pressure to his limbs and waist. Then he flew to the ceiling as if he was lifted by a hand. Then he used the corners of his diving suit to cut off the wires of the indoor lights. He learned this by chance when he was exploring the supernuclear replication of word spirit royal power in Yuking. I didn't expect it to come in handy here. Could it be that it has directly transformed into a word spirit that controls power? Hie Hie looked at his hands, feeling a little excited about this new conjecture. After all, if that's the case, then compared to his original power, there will be a world of difference. Let's test it again later. Hie Hie clenched his fists. Check all the equipment on your body again. Go ahead, dive in. Then he pushed open the door. The wind and rain were raging at that time. The silver moon has lost its light in the clouds. The continuous thunder and lightning stung the temporary peace in this boundless body of water called Monia. Underwater. The monster opened its huge mouth and sharp claws from the abyss. It will devour everything. Revenge for everything. Space jump. Huaxia, Yuking, in a specialty snack shop. A beautiful lady who always has a smile on her face was wearing an apron and tidying up the tables and chairs. Although the shop has only been open for a short time, they always do business until very late. Good quality and low price indeed. But more importantly, it's delicious. There is a constant stream of customers from morning till night. Usually there are 2 sisters and 1 brother around. But these days, only an older sister and a younger brother are here. Well, I checked the spatial order and found that person did use space jump. A little boy was following the pretty lady. There was a gleam in his eyes and a smile on his lips. Like a kitten looking forward to a snack. Really? I see. The beautiful lady didn't seem to care much about it and was still wiping the mousse particles scattered on the table. The little boy was obviously not surprised by such a reaction. But, with that person's current strength, he shouldn't have such power. It's too strange. Otherwise I wouldn't risk being discovered and explore the spatial order. The other person just slowly threw away the garbage, washed his hands and sat down. It was then that she looked at him for the first time. But when the little boy saw this, he suddenly stopped. The delicate face, which was between a boy and a girl, suddenly lost some color and lowered its head. He seemed to be avoiding looking into her eyes. Li. At this time, the beautiful lady called out his name while untying her apron. The little boy's body suddenly began to tremble. It's almost an instinctive reaction. She usually doesn't call people by their first names. It is enough to remember why we exist. The little boy nodded immediately after hearing this, tears welling up in his eyes. Everything that person does must be absolutely right and absolutely reasonable, because he is him. As the beautiful lady spoke, her purple-red eyes were watery, filled with obedience and admiration that was almost like faith. The smile that always appears on the corner of his mouth seems to be truly blooming at this moment. Like a rose with dew on the cliff in the early morning or late afternoon. Chapter 72. Reel in the line. Reel in the line. Notify Yesheng. Pull them up quickly. There was a loud thunderstorm and the dark night sky was filled with sudden panic. On the tugboat Monia, an old man with grey hair but standing tall and straight stood on the deck. The heavy rain continued to hit his motionless figure. All around were various technicians having heated discussions and taking actions, with fear on everyone's face. They were obviously at a loss as to what to do with what had happened and was happening underwater. Mixed with thunder and lightning, it was as sharp and piercing as a howling ghost. His eyes, still full of spirit, were now fixed on the vast surface of water. Even though all you can see is the calmness of the water surface being shattered piece by piece. This is a trap. In the upper reaches of the Yangtze River, about 50 meters underwater in the Three Gorges Reservoir. Ye Sheng held his head, which was in great pain, with one hand. The snake that was supposed to be controlled by him and had never made a mistake before now ignored his orders and rushed into his brain in panic. It was like a sheep running for its life when it encountered a wolf. This bronze city is now full of rotating gears. This ingenious creation, one link after another, actually drives the water pressure 50 meters below. The endless city wall was glowing with a faint green light, and the human figures on it had ferocious faces. It was as if laughing at the two little bugs below. Aki, evacuate quickly. Ye Sheng pulled out the folding knife from Aki's waist and suddenly inserted it into the nearest gear. Fortunately it works. After vibrating a few times, the gear actually stopped. A smile of relief flashed across his face, and then he quickly grabbed Shidaki's right hand and rushed out at the last moment before the bronze door not far away fell. At the same time, click, at this moment, the handle and blade of the titanium alloy folding knife stuck in the gear were completely separated. It fell to the ground, revealing the indestructible bronze. Ye Sheng grabbed Yaji as if he was grabbing everything in the future. He held it tightly, as if he might lose it if he wasn't careful. What happened? Aki couldn't help but look back at the bronze door that raised countless dust when it fell, and his tone was full of trembling. In front of him was Ye Sheng, his captain. With a look of ruthlessness and desperation on his face, he kept shuttling back and forth between the doors. But he discovered a fact that made him feel weak all over. He is lost. Or should we say, this city seems to have come alive. Ye Sheng's voice came from the single-line communication line in the diving helmet. Amidst the anxiety, there was an almost unsuppressible fear. The deafening bell sound finally woke Liu Mingfei from his sleep. Then he was taken to the library's command room. At this moment, the place was almost full of people. Unknown professors, counselors, and some campus staff. There are also some that I recognize, for example, the two super mercenaries knocked down by Hie Hie in Free Day. One has black hair and the other has blonde hair, standing on both sides, both exude the aura of a leader. At this moment, everyone's expressions were surprisingly consistent, solemn and firm. The reason for such a grand occasion is a mission that concerns all of humanity thousands of miles away, the palace of the King of Bronze and Fire. A gathering of the most talented geniuses in terms of intelligence, martial arts, and bloodline from nearly 60 academies. Perhaps no one could have imagined it. Finally, the structure of the ancient palace was solved by a freshman who had not even learned any knowledge about dragons. Everyone was surprised. Including Liu Mingfei himself. Black sheep. While the black sheep jumped over the high, wide fence. Ye Sheng. Are you okay? There was already a hint of crying in Shidaki's voice. I wonder if it was the extremely low oxygen levels that made her feel weak inside. Or maybe she already had some premonition. This girl who grew up under the cherry tree, despite her fragility, eventually grew stronger. Since just now, Ye Sheng has been covering his head while running around in this bronze city. At this moment, his mind was churning as if a magnitude 10 undersea earthquake had occurred. Constantly hitting the edge of his consciousness collapse. But fortunately, the snake finally brought him the only hope at this moment. Transparent structure diagram of this bronze palace. But very quickly. This hope is like the pile of loose soil on the edge of a cliff. The heart of this young man, who was only in his 20s, was once again in great tension. Because according to the map, he was clearly going a long way away from the exit. What's even more terrifying is that the exit on the map still changing. He is so tired. I have a terrible headache. His face was pale as a bloodless corpse. My hands and feet were waving constantly and I felt extremely numb and sore. You could lose consciousness at any moment. Don't stop. She is behind me. Her legs are short. One person can't escape from this hell. If she fell down, she would definitely die. Ye Sheng, Ye Sheng. Directly below you, 40 meters away, you can still cross the Bronze City. Hurry. Snake, came the voice of an old man who was so excited that he was almost crazy. Ye Sheng recognized that this was the voice of his mentor Mans Runstedt. There is still a chance. He instantly released the words and recovered a lot of his strength. Hold on to your girl. Swim as far as you can. Yeah, Yesheng. We are too late. Yaji's hands were also tightly holding Yesheng, but at this moment she seemed extremely weak. The tears still appear crystal clear even in this dark green deep water. She was trying her best to look at the man. I don't want to regret it, even if I have to stay here. I don't know how long. I will. Less than 3 minutes of oxygen. Recording death. It also records the girl's final courage. I love you too. Love you for more than 60 years, 100 years of my life. The boy's words, which were more than a vow, came to my ears. The girl smiled, and her smile was very happy. Maybe it would be great if this were the whole life. It seems that this is also the case, and light can be seen in front. It was a red gold light, just like a Kongming lantern. In the small town where Yesheng was born, you can always see such colorful lights all over the sky during the Lantern Festival. Is that hope? No, it's despair. A strange laugh suddenly sounded underwater. Heavy and massive. It's like a dirge from hell. When Yesheng and Yaji finally escaped from the Bronze City, floating in the grey tide in all directions. In the vastness, strange laughter was spreading. It was like an evil spirit escaping from hell. The water got colder. It's like it's mixed with ice. Yesheng held Yaji's hand, held a brass can in his left hand, and tried his best to float upwards. There was no oxygen left. At this moment they had been holding their breath for 3 minutes. According to the previous record of the longest breath holding, they can only hold out for 2 minutes at most. But there was still no light above. Just like their feet. For a moment, neither of them even knew which side was the water surface. That weird smile was getting closer. When the two finally looked down, it was a huge mouth that was many times bigger than theirs. It is now open. Like a crescent moon, the sharp, knife-like teeth flashed a bloody cold light. Iron-colored, like a lizard, but a million times bigger. The red gold pupils are flowing with light coming from the abyss. It's almost at my feet. At this moment, the boy exerted force with his right hand, threw his beloved girl upward, and put the brass jar into her arms. I missed the girl who stretched out her hand with tears in her eyes, wanting to grab your hand. He turned around and rushed towards the huge monster below that was laughing wildly and weirdly. His right hand clenched into a fist, even though it looked so weak that it was a little funny at the moment. But this is a man's last protection for his girl. It's much more decent after all. Ah, why did you say it today? Haha, glad I said it today. God, if you really exist. Please, let her live. Even if it's just her. The bottom of the water is as cold as the void. A boy who wasn't even 1,000th as powerful as the monster below. He smiled brightly and firmly. Without hesitation. Make a fist and use all your strength. Amidst the weird laughter, the two are about to collide. The girl who was thrown out from above was in pain and helpless at this moment. She could already see light above her. But her boy was about to sink into darkness. God, if you really exist. Please let him live. Even if it's just him. The girl's tears were so crystal clear in the dark tide. All was quiet. Only the monster's weird laughter was rampant. Until in the darkness where no one was paying attention, a figure suddenly rushed between the monster and the boy. His arms suddenly opened wide. In the midst of boundless despair, 2 golden pupils burst into flames. One voice overwhelmed everything. The spirit of words, the power of the true king. Chapter 73. The passage of time suddenly became extremely slow. Yesheng only saw a figure wearing a grey ink diving suit suddenly rushing between him and the monster. Stretch your arms out towards both ends. A deafening sound shook the entire river. 2 beams of golden light burst out from the diving helmet whose face could not be seen. At this moment, in this endless darkness, the only temperature is this the revolving lantern before a person's death? Is this my final fantasy? Or should I say, looking forward to? Looking forward to a god descending from the sky, riding on 7 colored clouds. With just one finger, you can draw people to the horizon. One kick can break all kinds of disasters. He brings with him a warm light and unstoppable power. He protects all that is good. He protects mankind. Haha, how sad and miserable. This is 24 meters underwater. There is no warmth, no peace. Just a monster waiting to crush your bones. If only it were true, it would be great. He closed his eyes slightly. Severe lack of oxygen has caused him to lose all strength. But suddenly, he found himself seeming to float. Is this another illusion? Immediately afterwards, my abdomen felt like being grabbed by a giant hand. He felt it. An indescribable force is pushing him. Push him towards the water. He struggled to open his eyes. But the huge force made it almost impossible for him to move his hands at all. Ah, it's a miracle. He finally narrowed his eyes a little. In the sight, the ink-grey figure with golden light flashing was gradually getting smaller. But on the hand facing this side, countless tiny golden lights were flashing. It's like the great power surging from every muscle, bone, and blood vessel. Am I going to survive? This power is so gentle. It's like being held in the hands. That is God. Ha, a god in scuba gear. Not bad either. He finally closed his eyes completely. There is no part of the body that doesn't hurt. It seems like the end of the world in my mind at this moment. The body doesn't feel that it is dying. Hey, cheer up, you're not dead yet. There is also a short-legged girl waiting. There is still a lifetime left, I have to pay it back. It should have arrived. Hie Hie slowly turned his head. His eyes, like the scorching sun, stared at the monster that was now completely nailed to the spot. It has been stagnant for a long time. Why did I rush here to save them? Wouldn't it be nice to just hide aside and see what you want to see, and complete what you want to verify? Why? Hie Hie thought so. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Isn't this what is called destiny? If he had never been to this world, had never been here, then those two people, and even everyone on that ship. Perhaps they will all be buried under this bottomless water. Repeatedly buried and washed away by floating sand and heavy pressure. It might even be eaten by something under the water. But, here he comes. And, here he is. Isn't death destined? Then I will save everything so that everyone can embrace the clear sky after the rain. Certainly. That includes you. Hie Hie was smiling, his eyes filled with the burning passion of the world. Look at the little pet below who is still struggling to move. He naturally knew that this could not possibly be the king of bronze and fire. Because it's too weak. Apart from being big and resistant to blows, it seems to have no other strength. You now have two choices. I don't know if this monster could understand, but Hie Hie just spoke slowly and calmly. With an unquestionable majesty. Either get out or... Hie Hie's right hand suddenly and slowly curved. It's like holding a balloon filled with water. The giant beast below, which was smiling eerily just now, now completely wailed in pain. The steel-like scales were squeezed violently. The pieces rubbed and collided with each other, and some even pierced into the flesh. Finally, the whole thing curled up. Like a snail in its sleep. Or I'll crush you into a ball of pulp. Is this really just a human? There was no trace of the golden red murderous light left in the giant beast's eyes. Even with a desperate fear. Or maybe it's the awe of the strongest. And this seems to be more than just about this power. It seems more like it comes from the blood and bones. Hie Hie suddenly thought of something at this moment and slowly sank down. Then he stood on the nose of the giant beast. He instantly became more agitated, and even his pupils were trembling constantly. And it started making strange and chaotic noises. Hie Hie did not stop yet, he slowly came to the back of the giant beast, then he took out the folding knife that came with the diving suit from behind. He aimed at the target and stabbed it hard. Only with the help of the word spirit was I able to get that thing. Then he stuffed it into the storage bag. Then it slowly floated upwards. At this time, the giant beast was obviously struggling so hard that its voice was almost feeble. The two huge dragon pupils were slightly closed at this moment. The true king's power of words in an instant, all the force on the giant beast dissipated. Then, he suddenly seemed to have regained his life and quickly fled to the bottom of the water. Hie Hie, on the other hand, hung in the water, looking at the fleeing figure. Between humans and dragons, it's not the case that one side must die. Obviously. Everyone has the right to live. On the water surface, the wind and rain were still pouring down. Lightning flashed across the sky, tearing dark blue cracks. Professor Mans Rundstedt was standing on the deck of the tugboat Moniac and dancing the cha-cha-cha happily. The violent storm lashed against his still sturdy body. He had never lost his composure like this before. But at this moment he really couldn't suppress his excitement and relief. His two favorite students are back. Came back intact. Although they were all exhausted and fell into a coma, they were still alive. Captain, there is an anomaly. I mean, there was an anomaly. Selma walked up to Mance with an umbrella and a document in her left hand. Seeing this, Mance immediately stopped and turned to look at the Latin beauty who was about 23 or 24 years old. His brows couldn't help but frown slightly. Has it? What happened? Selma looked over the document in her hand again for confirmation. Yes, according to the sonar, while Yesheng and Aki were surfacing, there was an extremely fast, and huge, fish behind them. Specific data. Over 50 knots, at least 15 meters long. When Selma reported this string of data, cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Professor Mance became furious and reached for his weapon. What fish could have stats like that? It's a dragon. You still want to eat my students? Get ready for battle. But Selma came over and grabbed Mance's hand, looking helpless. Listen to me, Captain. He disappeared. And more importantly. Selma paused at this point, as if even he himself could not express the result. Yes? Tell me what it is. Mance ran his hands through his pale hair and shoved it back. His face was full of impatience. Based on the speed of the dragon, Yesheng and Aki, there's no escape. So the people in the technical department checked the sonar map, which showed that when the dragon was about to catch up with them, a third person appears. After it appeared, the dragon quickly disappeared, and now, that person has also disappeared. After the words were spoken, both of them fell silent at the same time. It was like suddenly hearing some weird horror story at night. You said. Could it be a mermaid? After all, Huaxia is a country with so many wonders and such a long history. There must be something strange, right? Professor Mance pondered for a long time, and then came up with this completely unfounded statement. And his expression was extremely serious. Selma looked at him, and her eyes began to change again. Professor, senile dementia can be treated with medicine. Mance waved his hands, feeling a little amused. Even if I live another 100 years, I won't get Alzheimer's. Then he turned and went into the cabin. Let's go. It seems that I can only ask this question to my 2 students. The results of this mission must be reported to the principal as soon as possible. The tugboat Monia slowly moved away. Heading to the next port. There is a warm bed and loved ones that you miss. The entire Three Gorges reservoir fell silent again in an instant. Only the occasional rumble of thunder and flashes of lightning illuminate the sky for a moment. Maybe at some point. Then you can see a young man. He rested his right hand on the wall of the reservoir. His face was as pale as a newly buried mummy. Every step was an extreme pain. My head feels very dizzy. The feeling of fainting caused by blood loss kept hitting my mind. Finally, he fell down. Fallen under a little shade. The wind and rain were still as ferocious as ever, raging continuously. And in the vast waters, an iron-black, lizard-like head slowly floated up. At this moment, far away, thousands of miles away, the protagonist was smiling amid everyone's admiration and affirmation. Behold, because of him, everyone was saved. Chapter 74. How fast does a raindrop fall per second? Slow and galloping, then he saw the gaps between countless water drops. It seems that I can piece together the figure of a person. In a trance, then the scenery is quiet, and the 4 seasons are indifferent. He lay on his back in the cold mud. There was no strength left in my hands and feet. Only the eyes can be raised slightly. The blazing golden light had long since disappeared, and now only a pair of extremely tired pupils were reflected. Countless raindrops fell from the grey sky. It's been a long time, but I always feel that I am falling so slowly. It's like a slow-motion waltz, dancing in the water. In a trance, he remembered that he seemed to touch someone's shadow. It is so mysterious and ethereal. It's like a beam of rainbow light hanging in the sky. Now, what time is it? The sky was still as gloomy as before, with dark clouds floating in disorder. There's no telling what time it will be. He used almost all his strength to unzip the diving storage bag. Fortunately, the white N96 phone fell into his hands when it slid down. It shouldn't be bad. After all, that guidebook said it was waterproof. Fortunately, after pressing it, the screen lit up. The background of the screen is the smiles of 4 people. This photo was taken on the day I was leaving. Hie picked up the phone that day and set it as wallpaper. He also held it in front of Hie Hie. They say he doesn't look good in photos. From time to time, a few lines of water slid across the screen, but fortunately, Time allowed me to see clearly. Monday, October 8, 2009, 8:24 am. That is the first day of leave. Fortunately, I was not unconscious for too long. After waking up, the body seemed to become active as well. The dizziness caused by blood loss and the numbness and soreness between muscles and bones began to gradually subside. But it still took a long time before Hie Hie could slowly stand up, holding on to the high wall of the reservoir. There was silence all around except for the sound of raindrops falling. Occasionally, ripples appear on the water surface and trees occasionally raise their branches. What a peaceful and boring scene. Just like the eternal peace here before. It was as if nothing happened last night. But who knows, the tide of the times has risen, and everything is hidden behind history. It will eventually wash up on the coast. Or they will pounce on you with bared fangs and claws. Hie Hie put the phone back into the diving storage bag, turned around and walked away. He has been a witness to the beginning of everything, and even a participant. He was glad to be here. Mocking the powerlessness of fate. This was a gambling operation, but the biggest gain was this. Because he felt it very clearly and verified it. Destiny can be changed and destroyed. Hie Hie's face was still a little pale, with his hands in the pockets of his windbreaker, walking slowly on a stone brick path. You can reach the road by just passing through this not-so-dense forest. Before that, he had already thrown the diving equipment into the water of the Yangtze River. I saved 2 people by myself and gave them a set of diving equipment made of nanomaterials. It shouldn't be too much, right? After all, with Eva here, who knows if there might be some tracking or eavesdropping devices on it. Let it sink into the sand. I don't know if any clues have been caught. If I could really find out about myself. If I were caught, I'd probably be studied from head to toe, and then dissected and made into a specimen. Hie Hie suddenly laughed. He suddenly felt that he had such a rich imagination without knowing when. It must have been infected by that girl. As we walked, we slowly sat down on a covered bench on the side of the road. He wants to take a break. At least wait for the rain to stop. The weather in June is always humid, not hot enough and not cold enough. It is even harder to recover from a cold. I remember when I was in the second year of junior high school, I was alone in that small room. If I don't work part-time, I won't have money to buy medicine. Just think that if you hold on, it will get better naturally. It was really tortured to death. I wanted to drink a glass of water, but I felt too weak to even stand up. But fortunately, it finally got better. Otherwise, no one would know if you died in there. Hie Hie inexplicably recalled the boy and girl in the water. One is willing to exchange his death for her life, and the latter must be willing to do the same. They still have a long life ahead of them. Perhaps this was the most resolute and meaningful death in their eyes at that time. So these 2 people are almost certain to die. With the possibility of being discovered. The answer to this question should be easy to come by. The rain is still falling. Threads, it seems like there will never be an end. It's time to go back. Have you decided? But this sounds like a question. Is asking the ticking sound between the trees. Or to myself. He hesitated for some reason. There was no reason to hesitate. Day. Amid the tireless tick-tock sound, a different kind of sound was finally heard. Like fingertips on a piano, it is like the sound of a light string moving through the bamboo forest. Hello, can I sit here? A light voice suddenly sounded in front of him. Hie Hie came to his senses at this time and slowly raised his head. In front of me is a girl holding a dark brown patterned umbrella. Under the Kelly long knitted cardigan is a holiday-style bohemian plaid navy collar dress and Tata black flat marten boots. Standing in the rain, it is so beautiful and flawless, just like the lifelong dream of the most talented oil painter in the world. She looked like jade emitting a warm luster. Her eyes are clear and charming, and her skin is crystal white. Smiling at the moment. There are 2 small canine teeth at the corners of his mouth. It seems so otherworldly and lively. Certainly. Hie Hie didn't care much about it, as the 170 cm bench was not meant for one person. It just made some space to the right. Thanks. The girl smiled even sweeter, leaned under the shelter and closed the umbrella. It's raining so hard. It's been raining for days. It's a pity for my hard-earned trip. After sitting down, she raised her head slightly and looked at the incessant rain, her tone full of resentment. In addition, the emotion was somewhat obvious on his face. It doesn't feel like that. She seemed to be talking to herself, or to someone to complain to. But the only other person here didn't notice it at all, and just stared at the sky without any leaves blocking it. There was no emotion in his eyes. But one can tell at a glance that he is unusual at this moment. Hey! You're not also trapped while traveling, are you? The girl looked at the seemingly silent boy, her eyes sparkling, as if she was expecting someone who could share her suffering. That way she would feel better. Hie Hie came back to his senses and took out the diary from the army green shoulder bag. He suddenly remembered that he hadn't written yesterday's diary. Hearing the girl's question, the hand that had just picked up the pen paused slightly. Trip? Well, you could say that. Came here from Los Angeles thousands of miles away to see the dragon. Is it really a journey? Ha ha ha, my condolences. As the girl spoke, she patted Hie Hie on the shoulder. If she hadn't been smiling so gleefully and happily at that moment. Maybe you can believe her last sentence. Hie Hie was a little uncomfortable with the girl's familiar personality. But I also know how to get along with each other. The experience accumulated from the leaves. Either ignore her and wait for her to say she is tired, or just say something to leave her speechless. You too, what are you doing traveling to the reservoir? Hie Hie has already put pen to paper and started writing his diary seriously. Every time this happened, he would feel like a stranger looking at the moon at night. There is a sign all around that says no strangers allowed, which makes it seem so proud and independent. Except for those eyes. It carries an inexplicable warmth. Look at the lake, look at the water. The world is big and there are beautiful scenery everywhere. The girl didn't seem to be affected at all. She rested her hands on the bench, and her slender legs swung occasionally, causing ripples on the water. She smiled as she spoke, just like the sun occasionally peeking out from the clouds at this moment. As long as you know where you want to go, that's enough. After saying that, the girl stood up and stretched out her right hand. The raindrops falling on the palm of your hand are small and light. Then he closed his eyes slightly and took a long breath. When I opened my eyes again, I saw everything crystal clear, like a clear lake with many stars. The air is so nice after the rain. The girl opened her umbrella and stepped into the drizzle which had become much lighter. The real crisis is not that robots think like humans, but that humans think like robots. This is my favorite sentence, and now I give it to you. A young man who is lost on his journey. Hie Hie's heart was shocked. When he looked up, the figure had already walked along the path where Hie Hie came. In his hand, the pen hovered 1 millimeter away from the diary. Lost on the journey, knowing where I want to go. Where are you going? Why do I hesitate? Because, in the mirror of water, a vague figure becomes clearer and clearer in my mind, because there is someone I want to meet more. The drizzle was like a light veil, caressing a canopied bench, bringing a hint of coolness. However, only a wisp of breath was blown away. There was no one around. True space jump. One chance left. Chapter 75. I came here for the second time. Hie Hie stood on the embankment with his hands in his pockets, looking into the distance. The azure blue sea of whales and pure white clouds swept across the morning breeze blowing from Hokkaido and fell into the unknown sky. The lighthouse had long since fallen asleep, with only the occasional ripple on the sea surface. There is no welcome to Tokyo this time. Because he was a stowaway. Come for only one person. Hello sir, you are from out of town? Would you like to have some breakfast in our restaurant? It is good value for money. Just as Hie Hie was about to leave, he was stopped by a voice. It's in Japanese. Looking back. In front of me was a man wearing a black turtleneck, with a bright and energetic smile. The phrase used in this country is, full of energy. He is handsome and tall, just like the typical samurai image in Japanese realistic paintings. He was holding a flyer in his hand and handing it to Hie Hie. Sir, out of town, restaurant, cheap? This was all Hie Hie could understand from his words. Even though I learned some basic terms last time, and I occasionally learned them when I was in Yuking. His Japanese level can be summarized as occasionally understanding 1 or 2 sentences, but mostly only knowing the words in short sentences. I'm sorry, I don't speak Japanese. Hie Hie simply replied in Hyuxia and turned to leave. He wasn't here to have breakfast at a cheap restaurant or anything like that. After hearing what Hie Hie said, the man seemed to have no intention of giving up, and even had a kind of inexplicable enthusiasm. Instead, it flashed directly before his eyes. That's right, it's a flash, with extremely fast steps. This is not the speed that ordinary people should have. Oh, you are from Huaxia, right? I can speak Huaxia, maybe I can help you. We also have fried buns, soy milk, fried dough sticks and so on. All of this? Is our Huaxia breakfast so popular abroad? However, what surprised Hie Hie was the man's speed and pace. Although I did see his movements clearly. But it is obvious that those movements and functions are definitely not what a restaurant staff should have. Could it be that I was discovered as soon as I arrived in this city? Logically speaking, even if someone could notice it immediately, it shouldn't have happened so quickly. Well, I'm hungry. If it is discovered, that would be fine. Solve all the troubles that follow at one time. Judging from the strength he had previously demonstrated in Shuya Internet Cafe, they shouldn't send any powerful characters to capture or deal with him. If it was just the level that person just now. Even if there are more than 10 of them, they shouldn't pose much of a threat to me. Even if there is a spirit of words, there is still the power to fight. And if it really comes to this, then just open up the royal power and walk towards her step by step in an open and above-board manner. That's not a bad idea. And if it was just my misunderstanding, then go eat. I haven't eaten for almost a day, so I'm a little hungry. Okay, let's go. It's very close. I can also tell you about Tokyo's travel scene on the way. As he spoke, he walked forward on his own, turning back from time to time to explain which bus to take and which road to take to which scenic spot. It seems that he really treated Hie Hie as a tourist. After walking for about 4 or 5 minutes, a small shop appeared at the corner of an alley. It is indeed quite far away from the main road and the crowded area. No wonder that man was so persistent in soliciting customers. Hie Hie raised his head slightly. The name of the store was engraved on a piece of wooden board that looked a little old. It is impossible to tell what material it is made of, but the words on it are still vigorous and deeply rooted. It seems to be written in Hokkaido Japanese subtitle font, Robin. Above the characters, in smaller font, was the translation, Mockingbird. It is different from the general Japanese subtitle font, and it looks more like Huaxia subtitle font. Or should I say, this store is different from ordinary Japanese stores? Oh. I had this sign before. Maybe that's why everyone in my family has a good impression of Huaxia people? Although it's just me and my sister, ha ha ha. When the man saw Hie Hie looking at the sign, he smiled and scratched his head, seeming a little embarrassed. After saying that, he stretched out his right hand, lifted the door curtain, and shouted inside. Ling! A guest is coming. Then he took Hie Hie's wrist and walked into the store. There were 3 or 4 tables inside, but there were no customers at all. There was only a little girl who looked about 13 or 14 years old, wearing a white shirt with a stand-up collar and a grey pleated skirt, lying quietly on the table, as if she was asleep. Time ticks by, and the tables and chairs are wiped clean and shiny. It seems so cold and transparent. Just like in this city. There has never been a small shop on the corner of the alley. It was as if there had never been a little girl sleeping inside. Spirit? Spirit. Seeing this, the man's expression suddenly changed and he rushed towards the little girl. He was obviously at a loss. He could only help her up and hold her in his arms, then kept calling the little girl's name. What is going on? Hospital, hospital. Soon the man came to his senses, picked up the little girl and rushed out of the store. Then he kept running wildly on the streets. While running, he was still calling the name of the little girl in his arms. But this place is too far from the hospital. There are twists and turns everywhere and construction is going on everywhere. There is no hope for a car. The morning rush hour makes this road as congested as the stomach of an elderly person. Long and dense. Countless vehicles pass through it. It's like a beehive that has been smashed and the order that has been broken. Everyone wants to save themselves some traffic jam. I would rather let everyone else be stuck in traffic longer. What about the humility and courtesy of this nation? Oh, that's just normal talk. No one would really take it seriously, right? The little girl in his arms finally showed some reaction, but she was twitching slightly. His mouth was slightly open as he breathed in oxygen with difficulty. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. The man had been running at full speed for 4 or 5 minutes, breathing heavily, his voice trembling. He no longer knew how far he had run or how long he had run. It seemed that my foot was dislocated when I jumped down the stairs just now. Numb and painful. But he did not slow down at all and continued to run desperately. The grey-blue eyes were filled with desperate ruthlessness and determination. She's all I have. Why is this happening? Why does it have to be her? It's all my fault. Why did I agree to bring her out? What last mockingbird? What last wish? I just want you to live happily. He ran hard. But the road ahead seems endless, pointing straight to the sky. Pointing to the ocean where the sky is reflected. Blend in. Can never find it again. I don't know how long I ran. It was already getting dark in front of my eyes, and everything seemed a little dim. Are you still running? But why does it feel like the world is silent? What about the sound of cars? What about human voices? Can't stop. At this moment, he suddenly felt as if someone patted his right shoulder. I won't stop. Leave it to me. I don't know where the sound came from. My grip suddenly loosened. When he turned around, everything slowly returns to its original color. The scene before him was one that he would probably never forget. That was a back view. He doesn't look strong or bulky. The light brown windbreaker fluttered in the swirling wind. He held the spirit horizontally. Just tap your toes lightly, and there will be a bang sound. As the wind suddenly exploded from the place where he was standing, he was already flying dozens of meters away from the ground. It's like having 6 wings that can spread thousands of miles. In the sunlight, it was an angel with a golden body. When everyone around came to their senses and looked towards the place where the wind was blowing, there was only a man with his right hand slightly raised, staring blankly at the sky. He seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. Maybe it was a patient who escaped from a hospital? There seem to be a lot of abnormal guys like this recently. The world is really in an uneasy state. Soon, the man started running. Running so staggeringly. Yet how steadfast. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.